dip down and losing it as they climb back out. This is the basis for gravitational redshift, a prediction of general relativity. The phenomenon was demonstrated in the laboratory in 1960 and has since been observed in astrophysical settings, such as for a star at the closest point in its orbit around the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. CMB photons pass through these wells on the way to our telescopes. We might expect no net change in their energy, with the energy gained going in equaling the precise energy lost coming out. But due to dark energy, the universe expands faster than these gravitational wells around massive objects can grow. So it's as though the well becomes slightly stretched out and therefore shallower as the photon is traveling through it. So these photons do not lose all the energy they initially gained and will appear slightly hotter in the direction of the areas with the highest potentials, namely areas with high concentrations of galaxies. This is yet another phenomenon responsible for the slight fluctuations in the CMB that correlate very well with the locations of large-scale structure, like galaxy clusters and superclusters, and thus can't be explained by terrestrial phenomena. Radiation that is local does not pass through faraway galaxy clusters on its way from the Earth to an instrument in orbit, unless Pierre wants to claim that these galaxies orbit the Earth, which would be more than a little noticeable. This is also a very good tracer of the dark energy component of the universe, and would not occur if the universe was not expanding. And third, there is gravitational lensing. If the CMB were a local effect, there would be nothing to lens it between the satellites and the Earth, but lensing of the CMB is indeed observed. This is due to small-scale anisotropies, or tiny imperfections in the distribution of mass at the time the CMB was created. These anisotropies, tiny as they are responsible for the large-scale structure we see in the universe today. Without these slight density anomalies, galaxies and galaxy clusters would not have formed, as these anomalies allowed discrete regions of matter to slowly come together to generate these structures. These anisotropies in the CMB are distorted via gravitational lensing by this large-scale structure that has formed since the CMB was produced, and this is manifested in the data by slight perturbations in the temperature and polarization observed. Observations by satellites like Planck can then be cross-correlated with observations from other instruments, looking at smaller areas of sky using different wavelengths of light. There have been numerous such studies, and they fit the Planck data extremely well. These three phenomena, the Sunyaev-Zeldovich effect, the integrated Sachs-Wolfe effect, and gravitational lensing, are certainly not trivial, but astrophysics is not trivial. It's complicated, and for anyone who wants to go beyond the basic conceptual level in which I just described them to you, the literature is there for you to find. None of Pierre's followers have ever done this because they are not interested in physics, but rather anti-establishment narratives that make them feel cool and special. So that's all there is to it. Pierre's views regarding the CMB are spectacularly incompatible with the data, as are other crank ideas floating around regarding the CMB being starlight and other such nonsense. Regarding Big Bang cosmology as a whole, even with the CMB alone, the picture is clear, so adding in the other threads of evidence, like the recession velocities of galaxies and the relative abundance of light elements predicted by Big Bang nucleosynthesis, which I've covered in my astronomy tutorials, it's a done deal. The evidence supporting the Big Bang cosmological model is overwhelming, and anyone who says otherwise objectively has no idea what they're talking about. Moving on, denying well-substantiated cosmology isn't the only trick up Pierre's sleeve. He also denies the entire field of solar physics. He thinks everything we know about stars like our sun is wrong, a position that puts him in the good graces of the Thunderbolts Project and all the rest of the electric universe cranks, such that he was invited to talk at one of their little cult meetings in 2014. The funniest thing about the EU conferences is not so much that everyone is wrong, it's that they are all wrong in different ways that specifically contradict each other. It seems that as long as you oppose well-established physics, you're part of the team. So the only real theme is anti-establishment narratives, which once again is the psychological basis for this and honestly almost all pseudoscience. So what does Pierre say is so wrong about our knowledge of the sun?
Astronomers believe that the sun's surface is an optical illusion, and that the solar body is nothing but a big ball of gaseous plasma.
Saying gaseous plasma is like saying solid liquid. Gas and plasma are different phases. The sun is plasma.
In this case, it helps us to see why we view the sun today as a ball of gas, from the surface all the way down to the core.
Again, no, the sun is not gas, it's plasma. Gases are made of atoms and molecules that are intact. Plasmas are not. We do not view the sun as gas all the way down to the core because it's plasma. It's too hot in there for atoms to exist. Gas and plasma are not synonyms. He doesn't seem to even know what the phases of matter are.
Here is the spectrum of atomic hydrogen. Note that the gaseous hydrogen emits in narrow bands, whereas the solar spectrum from the photosphere is continuous. We will cover this in greater detail in a later video. For now, remember that in Secchian phase case, the white light of the sun could only be produced by condensed matter.
He is comparing the emission spectrum of molecular hydrogen gas to the sun's blackbody spectrum and complaining that if the sun is made of hydrogen, these should look the same. He does not understand that the sun is not molecular hydrogen. It's a plasma of primarily hydrogen and helium nuclei. It's not discrete hydrogen atoms with an electron that moves between energy levels, absorbing and emitting photons to produce the emission lines we are familiar with from observing molecular hydrogen gas in a canister here on Earth. He doesn't even seem to understand the Bohr model of the hydrogen atom, something which is learned by every high school chemistry student.
And reaches temperatures of 15 million Kelvin degrees.
Kelvin degrees? They're just called Kelvin, Pierre. Again, high school chemistry students know this.
The sun is said to be unable to synthesize elements beyond the lightest, focusing only on the synthesis of helium. In this way, modern solar theory has crippled our sun because it can't make any of the heavy elements.
Nope. Stars the mass of our sun fuse helium nuclei together to produce carbon and oxygen through the triple alpha process, and heavier stars fuse all the way up to iron during their lifetime, then producing the heavier elements when they go supernova. We know this conclusively from spectral analysis. More Astronomy 101 information that is totally lost on Pierre. It is astounding the degree to which he doesn't know even the most basic facts about solar physics, which leads him to so embarrassingly misrepresent the field.
Unfortunately, in the gaseous model of the sun, there are no real surfaces by which pressure can even be defined. There is no area in the force over area definition of pressure.
He is implying there is no pressure without a surface. This means he doesn't know what pressure is. Atmospheric pressure exists and has some value no matter where you are in the atmosphere. You don't have to scoop some of it up and put it in a container in order for it to exert pressure. The same goes for liquids. There are no physical barriers separating different ocean depths, but the pressure becomes greater as you go down. And the same goes for plasma. The more massive the star, the greater the gravitational compression pushing inwards. It's not that hard to understand.
If the sun truly has a fully gaseous interior, there are two problems. First, how do astronomers prevent the sun from collapsing on itself? Secondly, how does a gaseous sun maintain a stable radius? Remember that the rule in the laboratory is that a gas expands to fill the void, yet the sun is stable. So how is that achieved if the sun is truly a gas?
Again, it's not gas, it's plasma. Stellar material doesn't expand to fill all of space because gravity exists, and stars don't collapse because of all the energy being released from the fusion reactions happening in the core. Gravity pulls the matter in, fusion reactions push the matter out. It's called hydrostatic equilibrium. Ever heard of it?
Astronomers argue that within each star, the inward directed force of gravity is counterbalanced by an externally directed gas pressure and radiation pressure. When all these forces balance, we have hydrostatic equilibrium.
There you go, buddy. All good now?
But for now, what is gas pressure? First, think about the atmosphere above the Earth. Gas pressure supports our atmosphere. As you remember from earlier, pressure is equal to force over area. Gas pressure is generated when an atom in our atmosphere strikes the surface of our planet. At that point, much like a billiard ball, it bounces off the surface and is redirected upward. The net result is that any movement of an atom downward is immediately transformed upward. You will note that in order to generate atmospheric gas pressure, we needed a true surface.
This is getting embarrassing, even for Pierre. He is saying that atmospheric pressure only exists at the surface of the Earth when gas particles strike the ground, and that by extension, there can be no pressure inside a star because there is no solid surface inside a star. We now have to downgrade Pierre's comprehension of basic scientific terminology from failing high school to failing middle school. In Pierre's world, our lungs couldn't function even 5 feet above the ground. Fortunately, in reality, the atmosphere exerts a gradient of pressure from the ground all the way up to space. We can climb mountains and go hang gliding without worrying about suffocating. The same applies inside the sun. When we talk about pressure as being some force applied over an area, it's just any hypothetical area. It doesn't have to be a literal solid surface. We can construct a shell of any radius and do the math. Sorry, Pierre, back to 7th grade.
Imagine a container of pressurized gas in a locker under vacuum. If you opened it, the gas would fill the locker evenly. Then if you opened the locker in a room under vacuum, the gas would spread out evenly to fill the whole room, and so on and so forth. Now imagine starting with a lot of gas in an enormous room and releasing it into an infinite vacuum universe. What would you expect to happen? If you are a rational thinker, you might expect the gas to expand to fill the void, just like it does when it was released into an empty room. If you were an astronomer, you would say that the gas acts differently and instead of spreading out, shrinks down to form a star. In the standard solar model, this is called gravitational collapse, which can be extended to include black holes and the theoretical aspects of the Big Bang. Astronomers believe that stars are created by the gravitational collapse of a gaseous mass. This was once known as Laplace's nebular hypothesis, but today is known as a solar nebular disk model. This idea stands against the known observation that gases expand to fill the void. So how does astronomy get into this mess?
It's not getting any better here. Pierre thinks that a tiny sample of gas in a container and a gas cloud of many solar masses will behave the same way. Sorry, they don't. The gravitational attraction between some gas particles in a tiny container is not only negligible in general, but also beyond negligible compared to the gravitational pull of the Earth that the container is near. A cloud of many solar masses in deep space is not the same. The gravity between the particles is the only force acting upon them, and it's a lot of gravity because it's a lot of mass. This idiotic analogy he puts forward is the equivalent of flat earthers asking to see water stick to a spinning ball. Well, a tennis ball doesn't generate the gravitational field that the Earth does, and some gas in a box doesn't generate the gravitational field that a gas cloud of many solar masses does. Some people have criticized me for comparing cranks like Pierre to flat earthers, but the more I do these debunks, the more I see how similar they are.
That was because in the laboratory, scientists knew that gases don't emit continuous spectra, but instead emit in bands. We are all familiar with neon lights. Neon lights are made by filling glass tubes with different gases and then exciting the gas with electricity. Each gas produces light of a different color. Neon emits orange-colored light, hydrogen red, helium yellow, mercury blue. The sun and the stars are known to be mostly hydrogen, but the sun appears as nearly white, not red.
Again, Pierre is incapable of understanding the difference between molecular hydrogen gas with its emission spectrum and the plasma that makes up the sun. Stars are very hot. Too hot for atoms to exist, so the electronic transitions between energy levels, which produces the emission spectrum of hydrogen gas, has nothing to do with the black body spectrum produced by the sun. Stars have no true surface, so radiation that hits it is scattered and absorbed. The light we see from the sun is therefore emanating directly from the sun, and the distribution of this light is determined by the temperature of the photosphere. It's not a perfect black body because of the variance in the chemical composition composition of the photosphere. It's just an approximation. In fact, there is no such thing as a perfect blackbody. It's an idealization. So really, every time Pierre talks about blackbodies, he just reveals that he doesn't know what that word means.
An important note: the negative hydrogen ion becomes the key determinant of opacity at the level of the photosphere. This is a surprising model since negative hydrogen ions are extremely unstable and observed on Earth only in particle accelerators and in the upper atmosphere.
Really? That's funny because I use reducing agents like sodium borohydride all the time when I worked in a chemistry lab. They deliver hydride ions to reduce carbonyls on a substrate. Reagents like this are cheap and common. But Pierre isn't pretending to be an organic chemist, so we can let this one slide.
The fact that scientists wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on this model is embarrassing, but it's not a reason to keep chasing this faulty idea.
This is a really common thing for con men to say. They pretend that lots of money, usually taxpayer money, is being used to promote fanciful claims. This is something sleazy creationists do to object evolution being taught in public schools. Pseudophysicists will use the same tactic regarding things like dark matter. It's just people doing science that they don't understand, and bringing up money is just a way to connect emotionally with a suggestible viewer so they can push their idiotic agenda.
Scientists have long recognized that the solar spectrum has a blackbody appearance. The standard solar model jumps to invoke opacity mechanisms dependent on the free electrons and ions, including negative hydrogen ion, to produce the solar spectrum, as we saw in this video. But the classic building block of blackbodies are graphite and soot. As a result, scientists are forbidden to account for the solar spectrum using processes which can never be associated with graphite when it generates a blackbody spectrum on Earth. For instance, Wigner and Huntington initially proposed that a body-centered cubic lattice could be used to describe metallic hydrogen. So why adopt a hexagonal planar structure for the metallic hydrogen lattice of the photosphere? There are a few reasons.
Now we get to the meat of Pierre's absurd notion of what the sun is. He thinks that because graphite is a good approximation of a blackbody, and the sun is too, that the sun must be like graphite. But it has to be hydrogen, so he says it's liquid metallic hydrogen. This is very dumb. It's like saying that apples are red, and blood is red, so blood must be made of apples. Honestly, it's that dumb. Two things that share a similar characteristic aren't automatically the same thing. Once again, stars are too hot for any kind of molecular structure to exist within them. There is a chance that there is liquid metallic hydrogen in the cores of the gas giant planets, like Jupiter and Saturn, but planets are not stars. I don't think I need to explain how planets are not as hot as stars. Pierre wants the viewer to reject the entire field of solar physics with its mountain of firm evidence and replace it with the sun being a magic lattice of hydrogen atoms based purely on conjecture that ignores basic physics. This is what crackpots do. The reason we think liquid metallic hydrogen may exist in the cores of giant planets is due to the conditions we assume must be present, based on the extrapolation of basic physics principles regarding temperature and pressure. We do the calculations, observe from the phase diagram of hydrogen that liquid metallic hydrogen may well be stable under those conditions, so this is a reasonable prediction. Pierre does none of that. The same types of calculations tell us that it's too hot in a star for liquid metallic hydrogen to exist. He proposes instead that some sort of lattice fusion is responsible for the power output of the sun, suggesting that it should then be able to produce all of the elements on the periodic table. But apart from offering no intelligible mechanism for this process, it's also objectively false. It does not match spectroscopic data. Fusion in the outer regions of the sun would fry us all to hell with gamma radiation. Furthermore, we would have to see fusion happening inside Jupiter and Saturn too. Where are all the gamma rays and neutrinos coming from that direction? Where are all the high-energy neutrinos from the fusion of these heavy elements? The numbers and energies of neutrinos we detect on Earth match the accepted model. It never ends. If someone proposes a model, there are predictions that naturally arise from its application, and if none of them are even remotely correct, fact, there is no merit to the model. All observations and all data confirm what we currently know about the sun, and anyone who says otherwise just has no clue what those observations are. But we covered solar physics at great length in the debunk of the Sapphire Project, so head over there if you need more information. Now, we could do this all day, as Pierre says a lot of really idiotic things, but let's close on one more topic that will lead up to what bothers me the most.
The pantheon of astrophysics is headed by black holes. There is no observation that I could devise that would make an astronomer conclude that there are no black holes. If an object moves around a point that can't be seen, then there must be a black hole. Or, if there is a bright object that pulls nearby stars, then also there must be a black hole. There is nothing that could lead an astronomer to believe that there are no black holes. To them, it is a matter of faith.
This is just more preacher talk. There is always something you can do to convince scientists they are wrong. Just explain the phenomenon in question better than the explanation that exists. We see stars orbiting rapidly around a dark spot. Why? We do calculations regarding stellar remnants above a certain mass, and they produce black holes. Why? Take a stab at it, Pierre. Try and personally dismantle the mountain of evidence for black holes. Or just continue baselessly whining about scientific facts that discredit your stupid ideas. To people who actually understand physics, black holes are not conjecture. They are objects that definitely exist.
Radiation pressure does not exist in the interior of gaseous stars, since objects never radiate internally. Laboratory science shows that internal thermal equilibrium is maintained by conduction and convection, not radiation.
Gibberish. Smaller nuclei fuse in the star's core and release energy in the process. When the material runs out, the outward force stops and the star collapses. It's not that hard to understand.
The consequences of black hole science are serious. It wastes tremendous amounts of public money to particle accelerators and detectors to the tune of billions of dollars.
Does it though? More false flag alarmism. Scientists get grants to study the things they study, such as black holes, which exist.
Black hole proponents have also given birth to an equally bad train of thought in dark matter and dark energy, which supposedly makes up to 95% of the universe. This points to the fact that astrophysics is currently dying as a science and moving away from real progress into mysticism.
Another common claim amongst every perpetrator of this brand of pseudoscience. Identify the frontier of the field and just call it mysticism. It's a hook to ensnare the suggestible viewer. This is what would have been said about bacteria in the 18th century and atoms and molecules in the 19th. There will always be things that we are currently trying to figure out, and as Pierre is not part of that process, he shouldn't be opening his mouth about it.
Because my followers have expressed such an interest in this question, I have completed an initial review of the papers involved. The position I present in this video is appropriately severe, given the nature of the claims and the long-term consequences. Claims that a black hole has been imaged are so far beyond the realm of careful and prudent science that it is not too harsh to state that they represent the death of astrophysics.
This is what we call damage control. When you publicly state for years that black holes don't exist, and then someone gets a picture of one, you have to launch an extreme counteroffensive which ends with denying the legitimacy of brilliant scientific research. The data is right in his face, so he has no choice but to accuse hardworking researchers of fraudulence. Let's see how he spins this, shall we?
As an initial observation, it is proper to highlight the vast number of individuals involved in the final report. Given this fact, how can peer review truly exist when all the reviewers are by necessity linked to a much larger scientific network determined to validate the findings?
He's saying that because a lot of scientists were involved, and because the peer review involved other scientists that are part of the network of all scientists, that there is some kind of conspiracy going on. In reality, Pierre is just upset that he is not recognized as a scientist.
As a parallel, I previously emphasized that the WMAP anisotropy map can have nothing to do with cosmology. In this paper, the maps are not stable on a cosmological scale, lack unique solutions, and assume that the foreground can be perfectly removed. Yet why were the simple points contained in this paper not made by the reviewer?
He actually has the balls to whine about how the reviewers of the black hole image papers didn't reference his pseudo-publications. Pierre, real scientists don't care about what you say because you're not a scientist. When everything you say is objectively wrong, try not to also be a narcissist about it.
In this regard, note that the Event Horizon Telescope Consortium is comprised of over 200 members within 60 institutions and 20 countries.
Yeah, scientists all over the world collaborating to do science. Incredible, huh? Or is it a conspiracy just because you're not involved? You're like a preteen festering at lunchtime, wondering why none of the other kids want to sit with you. It's pathetic. Do you have anything to say about the actual data?
When dealing with the Event Horizon Telescope, astrophysicists are processing petabytes of data, or 10 to the 15 bytes, from which at most a few megabytes of information remain. Essentially, they are saving only one of their data set. Such approaches are both unconfirmed by practical experience and subject to enormous processing errors, even if the smallest oversight is made in removing the straining signal. Those who have recourse to these methods depend on perfect knowledge, something no one possesses. To highlight the absurdity of it all, it took a half a ton of hard drives just to store the raw data, as you can learn in the link provided below. The data was then processed, if you can use that term, to produce a relatively minuscule image.
I honestly don't even know what he's trying to say here. It's not the case that only a tiny fraction of the data gathered to generate this image was needed. This many hard drives were required because it was an astounding technical feat, so he's just lying. It's an image of a black hole in another galaxy that's really far away. Pierre would have no way of knowing this since he's not a scientist, but that's really hard to do. And the phrase perfect knowledge is meaningless in and of itself, while also having no application here. This entire passage is essentially him just saying, yeah, whatever. He is just saying words to say words for the gullible people who need to hear him say words to retain their delusion without caring what those words are.
In sharp contrast, in medical imaging, the acquired data typically constitutes a very large percentage of the findings, often on the order of 90% or more.
Yeah, we know that you used to do medical imaging. This isn't medical imaging, this is astrophysics. Just like your electric universe buddies who think that everything in space is electrical engineering because they are electrical engineers, stop pretending that your training in not anything remotely resembling astrophysics somehow matters in astrophysics.
As a result, the astronomers have no means of determining that the result they claim to be valid is anything other than an artifact. The artifact can come either from how the image was acquired or how it was processed. They cannot differentiate between two causes.
Yes, Pierre, the black hole image is an artifact, or just some random noise that happens to look exactly like what we knew an image of a black hole would definitely look like, with mass estimates based on the image matching the estimates based on orbits of nearby stars before we imaged it. The desperation is palpable. The image of the black hole is an image of an accretion disk of matter around a black hole. Real scientists don't play pretend. This video is getting quite long, so I won't lecture on the validity of the image, when a colleague of mine, Derek Muller, did a great job of explaining what this image would look like before even having seen it, based on relativistic physics. So I'll just link to that video below.
The key point is already made in this video. It is impossible to construct an image from a billionth of a data set. That requires current knowledge of what data can be preserved and what can be discarded.
This is now the second video in a series of 3 that he did addressing this singular image, because it was such a devastating death blow to his ridiculous claims. And in it, he just continues with the same talking points regarding a billionth of the data set, which is literally meaningless. They got data, constructed the image, and that's what it is. He has nothing legitimate to say. But since he has to say something, he focuses on just vomiting as much technical information as possible about the instruments and data sets, rushing through as much esoteric terminology as possible, concluding with the statement that the data is invalid, without having to substantiate it whatsoever. If people watching want to believe that the image is invalid, they just listen to him pretend to know what he's talking about, conclude that he knows what he's talking about, and and then take his conclusion on faith, usually while convincing themselves that they understood everything he said, and commenting as much on the video, remarking at how wonderful and elegant the Emperor's invisible clothes are.
I have already produced 2 videos on the topic. If you have not seen these videos, you need to have a look at them first. A few days ago, a scientific breakthrough of 2000 by the journal Science, as you can learn in the link below. Given the nature of the nephew, such things definitely make us pause at the state of current science.
And we arrive at the 3rd video. This one is literally called the Black Hole Image Data Fabrication Masterclass. The audacity is unparalleled. He is outright accusing the researchers of committing fraud. This goes beyond just presenting idiotic, unscientific, untenable ideas. This is truly inexcusable. And the video itself is identical to the previous, more presenting technical data that he knows lay people have no chance of comprehending, and talking quickly over it so that he can rush to his baseless claim of fraudulence. If Pierre was a real scientist, he would submit his objections in a paper to the journal in which the results were initially published, giving the researchers the chance to reply to his accusations. He doesn't bother because it would just be a public embarrassment for him, when his true intention is just to pose for his gullible audience. They nod their heads and cheer, and Pierre lives to lie another day. We could go on like this for several more hours, highlighting the blatant errors he makes regarding thermodynamics and other basic principles of physics, but I think this has been sufficient. If you are someone that has watched Pierre's channel and become convinced that he's some kind of revolutionary, you must consider the question, why? Let's acknowledge that lay people should not be expected to understand astrophysics, and therefore should not be expected to be able to discern between science and pseudoscience on this matter. Then why does one radiologist's opinion mean more to you than the entire astrophysics community? You may not be consciously aware of the answer, but I am. It's the narrative. You like the story. It's David and Goliath. You like the idea that Goliath, those jerk scientists that think they're so smart with all their fancy science, is wrong. And David, the rebellious rogue outsider, is right. Maybe it's because you hated science in school and this is your way of getting back at it. Maybe it's because you're helplessly conspiratorial and you automatically distrust anything you deem to be an authority, even when it's not actually an authority, but just a neutral body of knowledge. Maybe pretending that you're in on a new discovery that will change the face of science makes you feel smart and special, like you invested in Apple stock in the 80s. Or maybe you're a delusional narcissist, just like Pierre, who likes to pretend you understand physics better than physicists, so you support anyone who validates that delusion. But whatever it is, that's why you fell for it. That's why you talk like a fanatic. You don't understand science or even care about science. You bought a story, and you want that story to be true really badly, like a child that is convinced they have magic powers. But adults accept reality. Science isn't shaped by how attractive a narrative is. It's shaped by scientists who have studied science for a very long time so that they can now do science. If you didn't do that yourself, you can either learn science or trust scientists. Those are your two options. But these empty arguments from authority centered on unqualified non-authorities are the epitome of immaturity. It is not the case that every astrophysicist in the world is a complete moron that doesn't know which way to point their instrument, while Pierre stands alone as a genius. Astrophysicists are competent researchers, some of whom are geniuses, and most are merely hardworking individuals with specialized training, while Pierre is just some guy on the internet that pretends to know what he's talking about. There are a lot of them. Some pretend to be doctors, others nutritionists, or psychics, or healers, or in this case, astrophysicists. Some do a better impression than others, and Pierre's is honestly not that great. So that's it. If you're someone who has referenced Pierre in the past, hopefully you can now see him for what he is. A dime a dozen, Einstein in his own mind, cranked to the core. And if you're interested in learning any of this stuff for real, I have plenty of tutorials in basic physics and astronomy that can help you do so. Until next time. Hey everyone, as you know by now, chemist and proponent of intelligent design James Tour wasn't a fan of the debunk I made regarding his anti-science attack on origin of life research, so he made a 14-part series about how dumb I am in retaliation. Well, it was hilariously stupid from top to bottom, so I'll need a second video to get through all the errors and all the lies. In the first video, we examined his self-professed expertise in the field to show that in actuality he has none, and then we talked about all the research he ignores regarding homochirality. So now let's move on to major theme number 3, and the one that James spends the most time on. In contradiction with my claim that biomolecules are trivial to make, he insists that they are very difficult to make, or even impossible to make without pre-existing biological systems, or the more silent implication, divine intervention. In making these claims, he either ignores or misrepresents enormous amounts of research on the subject. And of course, he starts off by misrepresenting my video. He plays the following clip an excessive number of times throughout his series. Any biomolecule is easy to synthesize. Jim knows this. He's a synthetic chemist. This is, of course, in response to where James had said this.
First of all, we don't know how to build the molecules, the 4 classes of molecules that are needed for it.
This is ridiculous, and being caught saying this ridiculous thing, he has to qualify it somehow.
Well, first of all, every video where I've spoken on this has been a video on abiogenesis. The questions were abiogenesis. So when you pull one sentence out of context, yeah, you're going to get that.
Of course, he can pretend to have been taken out of context, but then why also say this?
Any biomolecule is easy to synthesize is as wrong can be. That is probably the most wrong statement in that entire video that we're looking at. That is the most wrong statement. Any synthetic chemist is going to probably just be getting up out of their chair right now because their palpitations cause them to collapse on the ground to hear a statement, any biomolecule is easy to synthesize.
Well, which is it, James? Are biomolecules easy to make and you did in fact mean that they are difficult to make prebiotically? Or are you doubling down on the idea that they are so super hard to make and every chemist in the world would agree with that statement with no qualifiers? You can't have it both ways. Not surprisingly, he plays the latter approach pretty hard, given the number of times he plays this clip, so as to set up lectures within his irrelevant expertise as a baseless flex. Of course, I was simply talking about the main classes of biomolecules shown here, and not the random synthetic targets he focuses on throughout the series that are totally irrelevant to prebiotic chemistry. He goes even further, launching into a diatribe about how laboratory peptide and nucleic acid syntheses are so overwhelmingly complex.
That's how these syntheses are done. This is not easy. Just because you have a machine to do it, it's not easy. The machine has to do a lot of things that's based on chemistry that people have programmed into it and put into it.
Quite clearly, he is missing the point. When I said it is easy to get peptides and nucleic acids, this is true. Again, we have machines that make them for us. That doesn't mean the technology isn't amazing. It means it has become a routine and trivial exercise for specialists in a well-equipped lab. Is it easy to fly from Los Angeles to New York? Yes. You buy a ticket on your phone, go to the airport, sit in a chair doing nothing, and 6 hours later you're there. Easy. Trivial. Does it mean that airplanes and associated technologies are not incredible? No. The same goes for peptide synthesis. You go up to the machine, load the cartridges of amino acids, make sure the solvent cans are full, dial in the sequence, and go home. The next day, you cleave the peptide from the resin, shoot it through an HPLC for purification, and by lunch you have your pure peptide. Minutes of effort and a routine operation. We make certain peptide drugs and oligonucleotide drugs by the kilo this way. We are producing billions of doses of COVID vaccines which have synthetic mRNA in them. It's no problem. So given that he now must pretend he meant that we are clueless in a prebiotic context, which is also false, what does he resort to?
The reason you can make polypeptides, the reason you can hook amino acids together is because you buy the amino acids from a company that has isolated them from a natural source through the digestion of proteins. And through the cleaving of the amide bonds there in the proteins. And these were all obtained from living systems. They were taken from biology, but when you don't have that, what are you going to do?
Right, all biomolecules like amino acids are so super hard to make, and we can only isolate them from living things. False. There are plenty of ways to make them via a racemic synthesis followed by resolution or by enantioselective synthesis. And then there are biocatalytic syntheses and industrial fermentation methods, which utilize living organisms. Using one method because it's cheaper doesn't mean the other one doesn't exist. It is also totally irrelevant to bring up the fact that chemists buy reagents from commercial suppliers, as though this invalidates their work. When scientists are focusing on a very specific research problem, that's their focus. They don't have to synthesize all of their materials from scratch in order to investigate that one problem. That would be insane. Different scientists work on different problems. This is like saying architects shouldn't be able to claim they are able to build a house unless they personally go and chop down all the trees to get the lumber and mine all the ores that will be used for the steel. Or that chefs shouldn't claim they can cook food if they don't personally hunt and farm all their ingredients. These are different tasks that can and should be done by different people. Okay, so let's start with amino acids and peptides. We have known for decades now that amino acid formation is no problem. Again, we can literally see them and many other biologically relevant molecules in space. They form in outer space. Then, of course, there is the Miller-Urey experiment, which showed that amino acid formation on early Earth would have been no problem. And in the previous video, we outlined multiple routes for their deracemization. Now for the peptides. I talked about this briefly in my original video, and he didn't like it.
You're going to do condensation reactions in water? I don't understand why some would suggest that you do condensation reactions in an ocean like this, in water. How can that be? Tell me about that. How do you do condensation reactions in water? Have you any references on these claims?
Uh-oh, someone didn't do his homework. Peptide synthesis in water is not a problem, James, because it is not a matter of equilibrium. He bets I don't have any papers on this, but sorry, I have many. Here are just a few. First, one by Chen and Yang from 2006. What does that say? Condensation of amino acids to form peptides in aqueous solution. Whoopsie, the introduction even refers to a variety of prior studies that have done this as early as 1978. This one uses sulfites and sulfur dioxide for activation, and it goes through the validation of multiple different sources of sulfur. Scheme 3 and Table 3 show the reaction and observed products. In their conclusion, they stress that this is a probable candidate for prebiotic peptide formation while supporting the hypothesis of involvement from volcanic vents. James stated multiple times that he would grant oxidizing or reducing conditions for abiogenesis, but let's say you don't like the conditions used here. Let's try some others. Here's one from 2016 dealing with carbonyl sulfide. This bit on the last page is quite relevant, saying that the self-assembly of peptides is well studied, observed under a variety of settings, including prebiotic conditions, and that the amyloid-like precipitates studied here reveal an unexpected ease of creating a higher-order structure. And of course, beyond these techniques in water, James displays his total lack of imagination regarding any relevant environmental processes or geological surfaces. To start, let's check in with Lee Cronin again regarding peptide formation using wet-dry cycles.
So peptides, proteins are made of peptides, and the way you make peptides is you take things called amino acids and you put them together. In the chemistry laboratory, you cheat and use activating agents, and you heat them up quite hard and you use these agents to make them. But what we showed is that if you could just put the amino acids together and dry them out and have cycles of adding water and then drying them, you can actually make these proteins with no activation. And actually for me that was kind of obvious, right? Everyone was saying, oh, it's hard to make proteins. It was a kind of hard, really obvious, although it was they said it's hard, it was obviously easy to kind of challenge that by changing the technical conditions. And that's what systems chemistry is teaching all the time. That it's not just about keeping, doing chemistry and quantification by varying conditions, but making having cycles to different things. And so the really nice thing about this is that with amino acids, you add water, you don't make any proteins, don't make any peptides, you dry them down, then you start to get formation. Then, when you make them wet again, they fall apart slightly, but slowly, and then you dry them down and they reform again. You think about this kind of wet, dry, actually what you get is a type of basic evolution. where it's almost a bit like if you've got a piece of clay and you're trying to mold it around a shape, and you let it dry out and harden, and it's not quite right, but then you make it damp and then push it a bit more, it gets better and better over time. And of course, there are 9-day cycles on Earth, and things get hot and things get cold, and there's rainfall. So you can imagine how cycles are very important for driving complex chemistry, and that's exactly what this paper did. And when we published that, there are 3 or 4 other people who published similar stuff almost at the same time. So we were kind of happy that there was already a community of people that recognized that we can do things wrong.
Then there's even the notion that prebiotic peptide bond formation can occur in absence of bulk solvent entirely. Here's a paper from 2020 using mechanochemistry. This time we see that mechanical forces and prebiotically plausible and ubiquitous minerals as activators enable the oligomerization of amino acids, such as glycine, in the absence of bulk water and at ambient temperature. What's that, James? You haven't heard of ball milling? Well, as you can see from these figures, this requires an understanding of geological processes, which is why you don't know anything about it. And how about this approach from Bruce Lipschitz of UC Santa Barbara? He's a synthetic organic chemist, just like you, James. He has devised some interesting methods using designer surfactants to form peptide bonds in water at room temperature.
I really want the synthetic chemists, my synthetic chemist colleagues to critique me. Is there something that I'm teaching in here that's synthetically incorrect? Let me know.
Well, you asked for it, so let's chat with Bruce a little bit.
This is not new. What we have advanced, of course, are designer surfactants that enable synthetic chemistry to take place, but it's within this overall realm of biological-like molecules that have been around forever that enable chemistry to take place in water, and that includes chemistry that leads to the extrusion of water. And so, for example, if we have a reaction that generates water cycloaromatization, for example, we've done, the byproduct is water. Now, it's counterintuitive. One would say, well, how could you do that? You're in water. Doesn't the water shift the equilibrium such that it's almost impossible to kick out water when you're in water? Well, the answer is no. It's not impossible. In fact, it happens all the time because we are inside of a hydrophobic pocket. The water is surrounding the soap, the micelle, the vesicle, the surfactant, whatever you want to call it. It's surrounding it, but it doesn't matter. And so when a reaction generates water as a byproduct, a condensation reaction we talk about all the time in sophomore organic chemistry, doesn't matter. That water gets kicked out into the water, but no problem, because inside of that pocket, that's actually the driving force to kick that water out. The fact that it goes into the water is irrelevant. There's no shifting of any equilibrium. The reaction is over. The product is made.
Beyond what Bruce said about involvement with lipids, peptide coupling with a suitable activator in water is exergonic, so this chemistry is not specific to hydrophobic pockets. Of course, neither those reagents nor Bruce's methodology are prebiotically relevant, although the concept sure is, but more importantly, they demonstrate that peptide synthesis in water is absolutely not a problem. And given the fact that Bruce is a synthetic organic chemist just like James and not an origin of life researcher, James has no excuse for being totally unaware of this aqueous chemistry. But beyond this, regarding prebiotic peptide synthesis, we are far from clueless. In fact, we are aware of too many completely plausible pathways to be able to say with certainty which one occurred. That sentence pretty well summarizes the current state of origin of life research, as we will continue to see in assessing the other biomolecules. But to continue briefly with proteins, beyond being clueless as to their synthesis, James also oddly pretends that they fall apart in water.
But when that enzyme degrades and proteins do degrade in water,
this is totally idiotic, since they objectively do not degrade at a significant rate, or life could not exist. The activation energy for peptide bond cleavage under ambient conditions is quite large, and peptide bonds have an average half-life of 7 years at room temperature. Here's a JACS paper from 1988 to prove it. Figure 1 shows the radio-labeled polymer-bound amide they used, and the rate constantly calculated can be applied to get the half-life we mentioned for a model peptide bond. Naturally, enzymes can cleave peptide bonds, that's how life does it, but without a catalyst, peptides are extremely stable hydrolytically. So James is just dead wrong yet again. He is mixing up kinetics and thermodynamics, something that even an undergraduate student might be embarrassed about. Isn't that right, James? Of course, yet again, James has to pretend not only that he knows what he's talking about, but that other scientists agree with him, which they don't. That's why James brings up the work of Matthew Powner, but in a totally misleading manner.
There was a paper published in Nature in July 10, 2019 by Matthew Powner. Now, let me just say, Matthew Powner is an excellent synthetic chemist. I only have the greatest things to say about him. Great synthetic chemist.
Quite predictably, James props Powner up for two reasons. One, to appear like a reasonable, respectful person. And two, because he is about to pretend that they are in agreement, when in reality he is just quote-mining them.
Peptide biosynthesis is now orchestrated by a complex host of genetically encoded enzymes, but it is inconceivable that these sophisticated and coordinated molecules suddenly emerged at the origin of life. It is inconceivable. To a great synthetic chemist publishing his synthetic chemistry papers in Nature, he says it is inconceivable that these sophisticated coordinated molecules suddenly emerged at the origin of life. But to some who put out YouTube videos, this is very, very simple. Very simple.
He grabs the word inconceivable out of context, shouting it repeatedly like a preacher, pretending that Powner is saying it is inconceivable that peptides can come about by prebiotic means, in a paper where he is outlining their synthesis by prebiotic means. What kind of a stunt is this? To anyone who actually takes one full minute to read the abstract for themselves, it is very obvious that he is saying it is inconceivable that peptides initially arose through the same complex mechanisms by which they form today. He wasn't saying it is inconceivable that they formed at all. He is an origin of life researcher. He isn't debunking his own field in the abstract of his own paper. I don't know what's more depressing, that James thinks his audience is stupid enough to fall for this, or that they actually are. The most hilarious thing is that he then continues on to discuss more of the paper that contradicts what he just said a moment before, knowing that his viewers won't even know what he's talking about. He even quotes the section that references previously reported prebiotic peptide bond forming reactions, like the ones we discussed a moment ago, and then shows the relevant diagrams, basically conceding that this is a valid method of peptide formation. So he then just whines about how it doesn't also address homochirality.
To form racemic and mixed diastereomeric products. He doesn't solve at all the stereochemical problem. None of this is solved.
Shift those goalposts, James. That's all you can do when the research is staring you in the face. Things do not get any better when he tries to discuss nucleotides and nucleic acids. Starting with the former, he insists that there are no prebiotically relevant routes to nucleotides.
Small molecules, synthesis, and you form your RNA nucleotide. When you're making a video like this, how do you just say synthesis? No, show me. Do you have a reference on that? Do you have a reference on that?
Well, let's consult the literature. We already covered this paper from Donna Blackman, which once again gives us the building blocks for RNA. Plenty of other work has been done in this area. Here's a paper from 2018 in Science on the unified prebiotically plausible synthesis of both pyrimidine and purine RNA nucleotides. Here's a detailed figure outlining the syntheses from prebiotically plausible molecules. There are many other such papers, and James conveniently ignores all of them, hoping none of his viewers will ever lift a finger to check for themselves. As for nucleotide polymerization, James is equally incredulous.
And then they polymerize. How do they polymerize? They don't just spontaneously polymerize because you got these two free hydroxyl groups. Those are going to compete. And how do you get these different bases? So you're going to mix all of these different ones with different bases? And why don't these three hydroxyl groups compete? Why doesn't this hydroxyl group compete?
Well, again, the literature is quite clear on this, but surprise, surprise, it involves geochemistry James doesn't understand. Remember, he didn't seem to like my discussion of tidal pools and mocked it as though it was of my own invention, claiming that no origin of life researchers would back me up.
So there's a lot of speculation in there, but it could come from your favorite place, your tidal pool.
Well, sorry, James, I didn't make it up. There are dozens of papers describing this concept, even in top journals. Here's one from 2015 in Astrobiology. The introduction references geophysical conditions that are conducive to the origin of life, including precipitation on volcanic landmasses that produces hydrothermal fields characterized by geysers, hot springs, and clay-lined freshwater pools. It references the cyclic fluctuations that would be relevant between the minerals, water, and atmosphere. Table 1 compares the merits and limitations of this venue versus deep-sea hydrothermal vents, which is food for thought. Here's one from 2019 in Life that specifically deals with polymerization of nucleotides. The first bit references prebiotic reactions that would produce important amphiphilic molecules, the formation of RNA oligomers, and their encapsulation in vesicles. The paper goes on to discuss nucleotide polymerization without lipids as well, first referencing other previous work that has demonstrated this happening on Montmorillonite. Remember in my original video when I talked about polymerization on hot clay? That's this. It also talks about the protective effect of minerals that protect RNA from degradation, and references the enhanced stability of RNA adsorbed on silicon dioxide when compared to in solution. In reality, all the common talking points against the RNA hypothesis have been addressed by many researchers, but this 2012 paper neatly counters all of them, from prebiotic RNA synthesis to instability, propensity for catalysis, and all the rest. James must not be aware of such literature, or he probably wouldn't say things like this.
How long is that going to last? How long is that RNA? Not going to last 10,000 years? Even after a day, you're going to have a bunch of decomposition. Like within a few hours. Remember, it's supposed to be stored at minus 112 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 80 degrees centigrade. And then what are you going to do? Tell me what happens. Tell me about the RNA hypothesis, this mumbo-jumbo about RNA hypothesis, how somehow this is life. You want to try to explain that to me?
We also see in section 5 of the Life paper that they use an apparatus to simulate prebiotic conditions. So when James complains that researchers are always unfairly using pristine lab conditions that don't correlate with reality, he's just wrong.
To do degassing, you need a vacuum. No vacuum pumps on early Earth. There was an atmosphere. How are you going to just make the atmosphere go away? This is supposed to be a prebiotically relevant synthesis.
He is clearly missing the point of what researchers are doing in such scenarios, because this apparatus has to simulate cycles associated with geothermal hot springs and fluctuating pools. There are other such cycles we will see later that have to do with things like plate tectonics, and even geochemical cycles involving cycling of gases and other such phenomena that must be simulated. So these types of experimental setups are not cheating, as James frequently claims, pretending that in order to be prebiotically relevant, we should just throw everything into a tub and walk away.
The ideal experiment has no human interaction.
This is how scientists replicate or mimic specific physical and environmental conditions that are relevant to the research question. You know, science. Beyond these types of experimental setups, David Deamer's team has been doing relevant research in the field for many years now, carrying out vesicle formation at Yellowstone, as well as RNA polymerization and encapsulation in vesicles through wet-dry cycling in actual hot spring conditions in New Zealand, as is described in this paper. So James should be thrilled to hear that the pristine lab conditions he is always whining about have indeed been expanded into prebiotic analog settings, achieving similar results and in some cases even greater polymer yields than in the lab. gel electrophoresis data clearly shows the formation of RNA-like polymers. This is experimental evidence that polymerization reactions do occur within drying films, and upon rehydration, the polymers become encapsulated within membranous compartments to form vast populations of protocells that can undergo selection and evolution. For still more, we turn to a very recent paper from another Nobel laureate, Jack Szostak, which outlines the emergence of RNA from the heterogeneous products of prebiotic nucleotide synthesis. This one solves the problem of RNA needing to be formed in homogeneous fashion from a specific type of nucleotide out of a mixture of substrates. This diagram outlines the non-enzymatic template-directed primer extension that was observed to enrich for homogeneous RNA over the course of multiple cycles of replication. They try altered nucleobases and sugar moieties, variations in backbone connectivity. But to summarize, this study demonstrates clearly how in complete absence of any enzymes, a chemical selection mechanism arose that allowed relatively homogeneous RNA to emerge from a complex mixture of prebiotically synthesized nucleotides and oligonucleotides. Of course, throughout this series, James expresses his disdain for the work of Nobel laureates like Jack, and this animosity is nothing new. A couple years ago, James got in some heat for mocking Jack at one of his sermons, even calling him a liar while lying himself numerous times.
You say, well, that's a book from 2009. Well, let me show you the primary literature. 2018 in the journal Nature. This is our top journal. You want to see what Nature will publish in this area? None of us can get away with this, except Origin of Life researchers do. This guy is Nobel laureate Jack Szostak. Here's what he writes on how did life begin. Let's go through it. I'm interested. How did life begin? These guys know Nobel Prize winners. You must know. The early atmosphere had no oxygen. It consisted mainly of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and smaller amounts of hydrogen, water, and oxygen. Light acid UV light from the sun acts on the atmosphere to generate hydrogen cyanide, a compound of hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Raining into volcanic or crater lakes, cyanide reacted with iron, brought up water to the rocks. The resulting iron and cyanide compounds accumulated over time, building up into a concentration stream of reactive chemicals. Life, as we know, requires RNA. Some scientists believe that RNA is nudged along by dynamic forces. Huh? Nudged has you can't put nudged in any of our articles. No scientist knows what nudged means. They don't know. Nucleotides, the building blocks of RNA, eventually form and join together to make strands of RNA. Some stages of the process are still not well understood. You think? How do these things get together? Show me the chemistry. Once RNA was made, some strands of it become enclosed within tiny vesicles formed by spontaneous assembly of fatty acid lipids into membranes, creating the first protocells. As the membranes incorporated more fatty acid, it grew and combined at the same time the internal chemical reaction of encapsulated RNA. That is nonsense. Next slide. Here is, next slide, the figure that we show. This is the figure. From nature, this is the figure. Cyanide derivatives and simple sugar. Those are not sugar. He says this is oxygen, carbon dioxide. That's fictitious. I don't know any sugars that have that chemical composition. You don't know that. He's lying to you. That's not real. Is this HCN? I mean, there should be a carbon, a nitrogen, and a hydrogen if that's HCN. And I'm colorblind, but I can see that's not really HCN. I don't know what that is. Maybe that's phosphate. I can see that. That'd be phosphorus, oxygen, nitrogen. Maybe that's phosphate. Okay. And then all of a sudden, poof, you got an RNA nucleotide. But the problem is that's not a nucleotide. It's the wrong structure. By far, that's the wrong structure. He didn't even put the right structure. At least he could have put the right structure.
He begrudgingly apologized, but apparently didn't learn his lesson, as he is seen in this series repeating the same absurd accusations and doubling down about his mischaracterization of some simplified figures he didn't like because they were illustrations lacking structural details. The problem is that this was not primary literature, even though James lied and said it was.
And then you have your base here, all right? So there's a lot of things wrong with this.
Sorry, James, all of these diagrams are just fine for where they are found. An article for Nature.com, which clearly is not peer-reviewed research, but rather is specifically for laypeople. The picture at the top of a bird foot coming out of an atom egg, massive dazzling illustrations, and lack of any scientific data should probably have tipped you off to that. But to get back to the structures, again, they are just fine given that hydrogens and pi bonds are omitted for simplicity. This is glyceraldehyde, the basis for all sugars. These are cyanide derivatives, cyanamide on the left and cyanoacetylene on the right. This is a nucleotide, cytosine bound to ribose with a phosphate. Look at how they line up precisely with the structures in line notation if you ignore hydrogens and pi bonds. This is undeniable. It is truly despicable that James continues to try to justify his rhetoric that day, going so far as to call Jack's work utterly ridiculous.
Nudged along by dynamic forces in the environment. That is utterly ridiculous.
I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that Jack has a Nobel Prize and he doesn't. Tisk tisk, James. Envy is a sin. Continuing, I also made the suggestion in my original video when discussing small pools that an inorganic catalyst displaying chiral faces may have promoted diastereoselective coupling in an imperfectly homochiral environment.
Mineral surfaces could have acted. So in other words, you're not sure. If you look up mineral surfaces, people have tried this. People have tried to take mineral surfaces and done an enantioselective catalysis. Let me know how well that went. Let me know their enantiomeric excesses. I'd really like to see. It's way below homochirality, way below under the best of conditions in a pristine laboratory. Doesn't work very well at all.
Well, James, you are essentially dismissing the dynamic field of heterogeneous catalysis, which accounts for an enormous percentage of industrial synthesis and does indeed utilize reactions with stereochemical control. But of course, you will always backpedal to your mutable definition of prebiotic relevance, and so when you complain about how I'm not sure, of course I'm not sure. I wasn't there. Origin of life research is about providing rational pathways, not repeating the entire several million year process of abiogenesis in the lab. You know this quite well, but like to play dumb anyway, which is quite easy for you here since you don't seem to know anything about mineral surface catalysis. To begin, consider just the Murchison meteorite. It contains 70 amino acids which arrived on Earth partially resolved. A huge piece of rock, essentially a collection of minerals, containing enantio-enriched amino acids. Doesn't this suggest that chiral mineral surfaces could be functional prebiotic and enantioselective catalysts? It doesn't take 700 papers to see the relevance here, and whining about low yields or having less than 100% EE will only further demonstrate your inability to comprehend origin of life research, as we've mentioned several times by now. There is plenty of literature on the catalytic role of mineral surfaces in this field. For example, here is a review by Hazen, which also examines the formation of enantio-enriched molecules. Quoting, "Such surfaces provide the most abundant and accessible local chiral geochemical environments and thus represent logical sites for the prebiotic chiral selection and organization of essential biomolecules." This is followed by plenty of experimental science, which, if you are not bluffing when you say you are aware of them, you seem to flippantly dismiss by just saying it doesn't work very well at all. So if prebiotic mineral catalysis in water doesn't work as well as peptide formation in a lab or a plant, it's irrelevant? We are talking about how these first imbalances arose. Hazen says minerals are the obvious choice, and this is supported by experiment. Quoting again, "Nevertheless, the widespread occurrence of local chiral environments provided the prebiotic earth with innumerable sites for
You know, sometimes the teachers would say this, they'd say, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I liked it when they said, you know what I would do when they said that? I would raise my hand. Yes, Mrs. Baxter, is it possible for a 12-year-old boy to get pregnant from reading comic books? No? No? Oh, okay, I got some misinformation from my older brother. College was different, though, and the college professors, they never said there was no such thing as a stupid question. You know why? Because they knew better than that. You don't get to be a college professor and still hold the belief there's no such thing as a stupid question, you know? So in college, I needed a different strategy, a different tactic, because I didn't want to study or do the assignments or anything like that. So I'd come up with smart questions that would make me sound smart to the teachers, you know, so when they were given the grades, they might think, hey. So I'd be like, yes, Professor, after perusing the copious reading assignments which you ungrudgingly designate as compulsory, it has become abundantly clear to me that the incipient, and might I say pandemic rise of quantitative easing in the post-holographic arena spawns a situation and, in fact, a conundrum in which the widespread growth of existential and even dystopian paradigms will threaten to dominate the landscape for the foreseeable future. Now, having said that, how would you therefore postulate a quid pro quo complexification from a nihilistic standpoint? And being broadly contemporaneous, would that postulation even be germane to the philosophical dogma of the period? And secondly, because this is really a two-part question.
I was at a Salvation Army store once. There was a guy in front of me checking out who wanted a discount on shoes because the shoes he was buying didn't have laces in them. And I was like, hey, it's $2 for shoes. Take a chance. You know, it's probably gonna work out. And he was arguing with the cashier, and at one point he goes, well, I want to talk to the manager about the shoelace policy of the Salvation Army. Those words have never been said in that order, ever. And I was next in line. I'm like, hey, maybe they take the laces out of the shoes so the employees don't try to hang themselves on their lunch break. Like, I'll give you $1. I don't have time for your chicanery. Oh, I was mad, and I'm an English major. I was like, chicanery, look it up, and I threw a thesaurus at him and walked away. He was like, I thought a thesaurus was a dinosaur.
It's funny, you tell people you're from New York and they assume it's New York City. I was working recently in Iowa. I'm working in Iowa. I meet this guy, he goes, where are you from? I go, I'm from New York. He goes, oh, New York. I know all about you big city New Yorkers. Ross, have you ever been up in the Empire State Building? That's presumptuous. I mean, I'm in Iowa. I don't assume this is your tractor. And then I thought it was funny, he asked me what presumptuous meant. That's kind of funny. Presumptuous is one of those words, I could not define it, but I can give you an example of it. I'm in a public restroom with an automatic deodorizer. Every couple of minutes, you hear that little spray, that little, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, I walk in, I've been there for less than 5 seconds. That's presumptuous.
So we're talking about getting older. Let's just get right to it. By applause, how many people here tonight are old? Okay, I said by applause. A few people raised their hands. Lets me know what I'm dealing with. Ma'am, you're back here in the fourth row, and I'm surprised that you clapped your hands. You don't look... You're old?
Yes.
How do you know that you're old, ma'am?
I feel it.
You feel old? Sir, could you feel her and verify that for us? It's not that kind of show, sir. Take it easy. See, I can tell that I'm getting older. Not because my hair is gone, not because my hair is graying. My vocabulary is starting to change. I'm starting to say stuff I know I never said when I was young. I walked in here tonight, the girl at the front counter said, how you doing? I said, fair to Midland. was at a party the other night. Somebody said, "Are you having a good time?" I said, "Oh yeah, it's a hoot." I don't even know what a hoot is. So here's what I've done. I've devised a test for you. If you think you're getting older and you're not sure, here's the test. Pretend that you're babysitting two little kids. You go into the living room and they are jumping up and down on the couch. Now, if you would walk in and say, "Hey, cut it out, knock it off," you're relatively young. If you would walk in and say, "Hey, cut out that horseplay," you're in the middle area. But if you would walk in and say, "Hey, that'll be enough of those shenanigans," it's over. If shenanigans is an active part of your vocabulary, buy the coffin now. But see, the fact that I'm getting older is really starting to piss me off, which is good because pissed off is a relatively young term. I mean, if I was peeved or, God forbid, irked, next thing you know, you're getting your dander up and throwing a conniption fit. And then you know what happens? Everything goes to hell in a handbasket. I don't even know what a handbasket is, but it can't be good because you've never heard of anybody going to heaven in a handbasket. And look, I am secure in my relationship with my Savior and that I am going to heaven, but if I was going to hell, I would not want to go in a handbasket. Because it is my belief that hell is populated by the type of people that would make fun of you based on the mode of transportation by which you arrived. Hey, how'd you get here? Oh, I came in a handbasket. Hey, Steve, it's another one of those handbasket people. Don't make fun of him, he'll throw a conniption fit. It's just... It would be hell.
My dad was actually one of the country's top Newtonian astrophysicists. So, he was really proud of me. He was like, "My son is a clown." He was one of those highly intellectual egghead kind of guys. You know, the kind of guy that says, "as it were," after every sentence. It was like having the nutty professor for a dad. He'd come up to me and he's like, "Hello, Robert. How's your one-man theatrical show progressing?" As it were. My dad didn't understand what I did. Like, when I was a little kid, I tried to tell him a simple little kid joke, like, why'd the tomato turn red? Because it saw the salad dressing. Remember that one? Yeah. Oh, that brings back third grade. But I get all excited. I go up to my dad and go, "Hey, Dad, why'd the tomato turn red?" He goes, "It's a photosynthetic process." As it were. I can't imagine my dad as a little kid. I don't think he was ever dumb. I think he was just one of those highly intellectual little kids, you know, the kind you'd like to kick in the head. He'd go up to his friend's house, he'd go, "Excuse me, Mrs. Chickenjansky." It's a Wisconsin name. "But is this an opportunistic moment for young William to perambulate in the field of exercise with the other adolescents?" As it were. She'd be like, "Billy, get your butt down here. The smart kid's here again." As he were.
One of my daughters is extremely smart. I'm not saying my other daughter's dumb. I'm saying one is extremely smart, okay? And I figured this out, and I'll give you an example. Like my daughter, one of my daughters is right reading level, right math level, everything is right where it's supposed to be. But my other daughter is on some astronaut stuff, and I just figured it out when they were about 3 years old. We're in a restaurant, both of my daughters said at the same time, "Daddy, we have to go to the bathroom." And I was like, this is horrible, because no dad want to have to take his daughters into no men's bathroom. So I'm like, look, don't nobody look at nothing. Don't nobody touch nothing. Matter of fact, don't even touch each other, because I don't know how this works, okay? So we get in the bathroom, they use the bathroom, we walk out to the sink, they're washing their hands, and all of a sudden my daughter, who's 3 years old, was trying to read the sign on the wall. And I was like, wow, she trying to read the sign at the sink? She only 3 years old, I'm impressed. A couple minutes later, my daughter was like, Daddy, why do employees have to wash their hands before returning to work? I was like, what? I said, you just read that? She said, yes, sir. And I started tripping because I'm like, maybe I can read at 3. I just only remember having to read in kindergarten. You understand what I'm saying? But nobody remembers being 3, you know what I mean? But I got another 3-year-old right beside her, another crash dummy right there. I'm like, hey, can you read that sign? She said, yes, sir. I said, what does it say? She said, brown. I said, not the color. What's the word say? She said, white. I said, you can't read that? She's like, I'm 3. I said, that's what I thought. Don't touch her, she a mutant. That's exactly what I thought. Ever since that moment, man, my daughter has found a way to make me feel dumb every single year without even trying, right? Last year, my daughters wanted wristwatches for Christmas, right? So I was like, I got an idea. I'll pick them up one weekend, we'll go to the mall, go through the store, look at some watches, then I know what to get, what not to get for Christmas, right? We get to the 3rd store, my daughter goes, oh. I said, what's the problem? She's like, where are the analog watches? I said, who makes that? She said, analog. I said, what is that, Timex, Rolex, Hublot? Who makes that? She said, analog, Daddy. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, these are digital. I was like, and? She's like, the other watch, long hand, short hand. I said, who told you that? She's like, that's what we learned in school. I said, that's wrong. She said, what's it called? I said, it's called a regular watch. She's like, it's not. I said, it is. I called my ex-wife on the phone. I said, hey, the watch with just the numbers on it, what's that called? She said, digital. I said, the one with the long hand and short hand? I said, what's that called? She's like, a regular watch. I said, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure 2 dumb parents can make a smart kid is what I was trying to figure out. Now, with twins, everything is a competition. You know, everything's competitive. And my other daughter's tired of hearing how smart her sister is. She wanted to get some praise. So one day my daughter comes in and goes, Daddy, guess what the teacher said? I said, what did the teacher say? She said, the teacher said I had the neatest handwriting in the whole grade. I said, the whole grade? She said, the whole grade. I said, write something for me. She wrote something. I made a big deal about it. I said, wow, that's beautiful. I never seen somebody your age write that neat before. That's absolutely amazing. Her sister goes, puh. I said, what's the problem? She's like, her tittles aren't even in the right position. I said, her what? She said, her tittles. I was like, what's that? She said, that's the dot over top of the lowercase I. I said, oh, you just making stuff up now. She's like, look it up. I go on my phone, I'm looking it up. But as I'm looking it up, I'm telling her, hey, here's a situation. You could have happily been happy for your sister and just gave her some praise instead of trying to be a jerk and trying to make her feel bad about herself. I was like, and I'm looking this information up and I'm reading the definition and you owe her an apology because that's not what it means. She said, you spelled it incorrectly. I said, you better get out my face before I put a tittle over your eyes. You know?
I think you can tell how much we love food based on the shows that are popular, you know? Man versus Food. They're on round 2 of that. They got a new guy because the first one exploded or whatever. Like, do we need to do that show again? I don't think we do. Did we not learn the first time around? I did. I learned what'll happen to your body if you eat terrible every day for 6 years. And if you think I'm wrong, watch an episode from season 1 of Man vs. Food, then immediately watch an episode from season 6 of Man vs. Food. You'll see the difference. That guy was way skinnier when he started. And he had an amazing vocabulary. Where'd that go? Watch season 1. The guy is super articulate. He's like, folks, there's a symphony of flavor going on in my mouth right now. When I crunch down, I got heat from the peppers, I got sweet from the relish, there's salt in the bacon. This place is amazing. They've made perfect harmony in the form of a sandwich. But then 6 years later, he's like, this is yummy. This is so good.
Here's the thing about me, folks. I look at things differently. I don't have a big vocabulary. In fact, vocabulary is the biggest word in my vocabulary. I swear to you, just up till the other day, I thought euthanasia meant the kids in China. If you ain't laughing, you're stupider than me, the 3.8. I thought monogamy was a wood. My wife hates that joke. She goes, does that mean you're cheating on me? Like, what are you talking about? You know I'm monotonous. I thought bipolar meant I was attracted to dudes and bears. You get that in a minute, sir.
We don't communicate very well anymore in this culture. That's the problem, too. We used to be able to communicate. We used to have words. Some of you old people remember words? Remember those? There was like, kids, you don't know what we're talking about, but there was an alphabet, and you could take letters from an alphabet and arrange them in certain ways to form these things called words, and those could be used to communicate ideas. And now we just text people things. Emojis. I got an emoji from my kids a couple of months ago, and it was just a smiley face, an explosion, and a pile of poop with eyes in it. And that meant happy birthday, Dad. But it wasn't always that way. It used to be we had words, we would communicate. I did some research. William Shakespeare had an active vocabulary of 54,000 words. 54,000. Today in the United States, we, all of us, have an active vocabulary of 3,000 words. Which is why when we read Shakespeare, we're lost. We're like, what lieth through yonder, whereupon wood breaketh on the... And just put in a DVD. I don't pay for Netflix so you kids can sit there and read. And I started thinking about little kids in the 16th century. Those kids had a bigger vocabulary than I have now as an adult because they were exposed to that language, which means I am not smart enough to read fairy tales to 16th century children. I'd be lost in the kids section at the library in the 16th century. Can you imagine what their books were like? It'd be like, in time past, or not long ago, there lived pigs in stature little, in number 3, who, being of an age both entitled and inspired to seek their fortune, did set about to do thusly. When they had traveled a distance, Pig numbered first spake, saying, Hearken, brethren, heed this tempestuous realm. Tarry we long from hearth and home, we shall fare, I fear, not well. And so, being collectively agreed but individually impelled, the diminutive swine set about each to erect for himself an abode. Pig numbered first did construct his house from straw. Pig numbered second did likewise, though rather not from straw, instead from sticks, meanwhile, unique in his imagining. Pig numbered 3 did erect as his domicile, stalwart and garish, a structure made from brick entirely. Ah, but soon there happened along, as is frequently the scenario in classic tale of protagonist pig or red-hooded child. A wolf, carnivorous nature in full season, he called out to the straw-ensconced swine, saying, Pray thee, little pig, grant me entrance. But Pig 1 recalled with sage foreboding that he is mad who trusts in the tameness of a belly-pinched wolf, and responded immediately, Nay, it shall not be, indeed, not by wit or whiskered jowl. To this most expected response, the wolf replied immediately, Then steel thyself, little pig. Forthwith shall I endeavor, in blowing means both huffing and puffing, to dismantle yon flippin' flaxen fortress. Whereupon there issued forth from the wolf an exhale of gale proportions that quickly rendered straw hovel to dregs and dross, and carried aloft Piglet and shattered quarters both. Exposed now to claw and fang, Piglet 1 made haste, wolf in pursuit, to the stick-festooned sanctum of Peccary Secondary. causing Pig 2 to cry out in dismay, "Well, this knots my knickers!" The marshalling of feral wolf to my doorstep is nowhere among those endeavors amenable or congenial. 1,000 pardons, begged one. It would seem the beast's painful breath hath purged me of home and sound judgment alike. The malevolent blast of the wolf's exhale splattered second swine shack and shortest sanctimonious scolding simultaneously. Lo and behold, squealed 2, stand we now amid wooden wreckage, tremulous and vulnerable, with nary a strategy for eschewing the canine devourer looming in deadly proximity. Strategy, exclaimed one, while 'tis noble the contemplation of tactical particularities, pressed as we are with time restraints forbidding detailed strategical conversation, I would urge we run. Whether by their own fleet-footed competence or the wolf's windless attitude, the bantam porkers arrived at their ultimate kindred neighbor's inexpugnable brick ingress unscathed. Upon the third pig's door, with urgent hooves they pounded, calling out, "Unbar this entrance, and with haste we beseech thee!" The third pig hailed from the American colonies. Possessing a vocabulary substantially less robust than his impromptu visitors, replied, "Say what?" "Seek we sanctuary," they implored on the verge of hysteria, "lest we fall forthwith to the ravenous appetency of yonder approaching carnivore." Still confounded by their importunate words, Pig 3 did render ajar his portal, whereupon 1 and 2 spilled through and collapsed beyond his threshold, enervated. "So y'all just wanted to come in? Why didn't you say that?" Hiss of the wolf could be heard. "Pray thee, pigs, grant me entrance." "The wolf," said 1 and 2. "Wolf," said 3. "What do you suppose he wants?" "He seeks to gain purchase within. Indeed, he would occupy this very alcove were he but afforded the most meager of opportunity." "Right. I reckon I'll just ask him what he wants." "Under no circumstances," squealed 2, flinging self against portal. "There is naught to be gained accosting external opponent, save our own immediate demise." "What did you say about my mama?" House and occupants were again engulfed in a malevolent blast of wolfish wind. The foundation shook, the frame rattled, and lo, to the astonished eyes of piglets and encroaching scoundrel alike stood the third pig's lodging undaunted. Aghast and befuddled, 2 queried of 3, "How does, against such relentless and torrential onslaught, this domicile endure?" Pig 3 puffed out chest, tapped a hoof to the hearth, and responded, "It's American made."
But I'm healing up pretty good, though. You know why I think I'm healing up pretty good? Because I took yoga before I did it. I've been taking yoga for the last 4. Anybody ever take yoga? Anybody take hot yoga? Hot yoga is, as the white girls say, amazing. Trust me, if there's ever a word that young white girls own, it is amazing. Everything to a young white girl is amazing. Like, oh my God, this food is amazing. It's French fries. I don't care. It's amazing. And that's not even a stereotype. That's the truth. And some stereotypes are true. It doesn't make you a racist. Like, only white guys in flip-flops. Only white guys can rock flip-flops like nobody's business. Like, all right, going to a wedding? Better get my good flip-flops on. All right. I'll be the toast of Provo and these son of a guns. You want to know how many black people live in your town? Go to a 40-cent wing night at Buffalo Wild Wings. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know we had this many. You guys live here in Provo? No, man, we're from Chicago. I heard on Facebook, I heard a 40-cent wing night. Man, this spicy garlic. Vocabulary, all right? Like, I was watching this one Floyd Mayweather fight, the one where he sucker punched this guy, and his white lady next to me, sucker punch, you like being sucker punched? That's a weird time to go, woo, sucker punch, bro. Like, I was watching Floyd Mayweather fight, and he sucker punched this guy, and his white lady next to me goes, oh my gosh, that guy just got clobbered. I go, clobbered? No offense, clobbered, flabbergasted, no offense, that's you guys' word, no offense. Ever heard that conversation in the hood? Like, hear about Devontae last night? What happened? He got beat up last night. Devontae got beat up? Oh, I'm flabbergasted. What happened? Some white dude in flip-flops at 40-cent wing night beat him down. And it was amazing.
All right, 27-year-old virgin. Jesus Christ. Hey, Billy, I'd love to hear your humorous take on my pathetic situation. First of all, dude, let's work on your self-esteem. All right, you're already shitting all over yourself. All right, watch this guy. Watch him shit all over himself. I'm a 27-year-old virgin. Oh, Jesus. That's what he wrote. Now, your first question is going to be, how the fuck did that happen? Well, to protect myself, I'd actually prefer to keep my background as quiet as possible. Hey, I'm not trying to get you to rat yourself out. Here's what I can say. I come from a rich town inhabited by obnoxious cunts. I was always the weird kid and very socially awkward. People hated me no matter how nice I was. Jesus Christ, dude, are you like a superhero? That's like the exact same background of like every fucking superhero movie, isn't it? It's probably because nerds write those movies. Because they don't know how to fight, and all of a sudden they're like, what if I knew how to fight? What if I could fly? What if there was a guy who could save me? And then they draw it. And then nerds line up around the block to go see it. Dude, you see the new Spider-Man? Yes, it's exactly like the other ones. I was always the weird kid and very socially awkward. People hated me no matter how nice I was, and eventually I came to hate myself and still do. I called it. Dude, I fucking called it. He's shitting all over himself. Eventually, it was discovered that I most likely have a mild case of Asperger's syndrome, which is a mild form of autism, which is way out of my league. Are you guys trying to make me look dumb? I thought I did that. I achieved that by how awful I read out loud. Here we go. That causes social ineptitude and quirky personality traits. Well, I would go find a hooker with Asperger's. That's the first thing I would do. And get the fucking V off my back. Definitely wear a condom. See, that's where my advice is going to be coming from. You guys have some weird conversation in some ironic vehicle. At least discovering this made me more of self-aware, and I've been able to clean up my act over the last few years. But I still have a lot of social anxiety and shyness and very few friends. On the flip side, I'm actually pretty decent looking. I have a decent job in a laboratory. He's a fucking... This guy, he's going to get bit by something radioactive, and he's going to become a superhero. And I'm a certified commercial pilot and do volunteer work. Dude, like, you know something? If I was in the FBI, like, so many fucking red flags just went up there. Okay, that's the setup now. Now for the question. First, what the fuck would you do if you were in my situation? I told you, I'd get a hooker with Asperger's syndrome, and you guys could just bond over that. I don't know. Let me read all your questions. I'm obviously kidding about trying to find a hooker with Asperger's syndrome, all right? You couldn't find one. That would be like needle in a haystack. What you'd have to do is go to an escort service and request that personally. I would think. I'm looking for 36, 24, 36 with Asperger. Hair color does not matter. Yes, I can hold. Next, if eventually I ever do make it anywhere with a chick, should I tell her up front about my status? I had this conversation a few weeks ago with a friend who has a lot of romantic experience, and she said it would be extremely obvious that I'm new to the game and that withholding that information could itself be detrimental. But I also know that if I do tell a chick I'm 27-year-old virgin, she will demand an explanation before going any further, and it will send up red flags for the most. What do you do, Bill? Thanks for doing your awesome podcast, and go fuck yourself. All right, this is what I would do. I would just start hitting on every chick that fucking interests me, and I would be just totally honest. Tell her what your situation is, and you know, if she doesn't accept it, then fuck her. Let her walk, and then you don't have to deal with any of the bullshit. You just fast forwarded through a 3-year fucking horrific relationship. I would just be upfront with people. I wouldn't open it with, "Hey, you have beautiful eyes, and I have Asperger." I wouldn't do that. You know, I would work on my self-esteem. I wouldn't talk shit. You shit on yourself right out of the gate. I mean, obviously, I knew you were going to do that when you said you were a 27-year-old virgin, and you're probably going to go that route. But think good thoughts about yourself, man. I know that's kind of like simple, but you gotta amp yourself up a little bit. Go out there and you don't have to go find the chick of your dreams, but just go out. You don't got to tell some girl you got fucking Asperger's syndrome. You don't. Why don't you just do that with somebody that you're really interested in? But if you just want to go out and get laid, just go out there, start hitting on chicks, turn it into a game. So you don't have to deal with the pain of the rejection. Just be like, all right, I don't have the balls to take the next step. Whatever that step is, peeling yourself off the fucking wall, striking up a conversation, just saying hello to a pretty girl as she walks down the street. Just try to get over that fucking hurdle and give yourself permission to suck, and you gradually build it up. It's like learning how to play guitar. You're not going to pick it up and immediately be able to play all your songs. You learn a couple of fucking chords, then your fingers hurt, right? And you get frustrated, but you keep coming back, and eventually you can fucking play. Pussy is no different. That's what I would do. Put the Asperger on the back burner. Who knows, dude? Maybe you're not as fucked up as you think you are. Socially. You know what I mean? Maybe you got a sense of humor under that. I think you do. You shit on yourself in a funny way. Spin it around that way. Do you have any interests? Go to a fucking, I don't know, whatever. You fly kites, go to some flying the kite convention. There's got to be some woman there who also likes kites. I know that was an overly simplified thing, but that's what I would do. All right? And then when you go to hook up with somebody, and they, tell them if you don't know what you're doing too. Watch a couple of fucking pornos. You'll get the idea. Actually, no, don't do that. Don't do that, because then you'll fucking start slapping them around. Yeah, don't do that. I don't know what to tell you, dude. Buy some books. I say go buy some books in that part of the bookstore that if bookstores exist anymore. Go online. There's got to be plenty of information. I bet if you literally looked up finger banging technique, if you looked how to kiss, I bet there's just going to be reams of fucking information. I've never done that because I never had to. Oh, just kidding. Of course I had to. You think that I didn't wish that fucking information was around? Way back in the day when you had no idea, you just practiced at kissing your fucking pillow and tried to overhear conversations in the fucking high school cafeteria and try to figure out what people were talking about. That's all I could do. You have the whole world at your fingertips, So when you're done in the laboratory working with radioactive shit before you get bit by something, why don't you go out and get laid before you learn how to fly? All right? All right. Depressed dude. Hey, Billy Cunt. I've been listening to your podcast for years. The deranged, psychopathic perspective reminds me I'm not the only one shaking ladders. I don't know what that means. Is this guy from Boston? I've been listening to the podcast for years. The deranged, psychopathic perspective reminds me I'm not the only one shaking ladders. That's the accent. Shaking ladders. I don't know what that means. Anyways, I got a problem. I was in Boston all last week, so the Boston accent kind of came back. The whole, I got a problem. It says, get a job, get a job.
Let's clear our throats to start.
This stuff is good. We're live? That's it, fuckers. That's it. I'm pushing the fucking computer away. I got throat coat tea.
That's right. You're ready to go.
Billy Burr.
Hey, how are you?
Netflix special out today. Out now.
That's right. Walk your way out. Shot at the Ryman Theater in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's where they used to do Grand Ole Opry. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, and I had done it in 2014. Vince Vaughn, Wild West, he has a comedy festival there. I don't know if you've done it yet. But
that's where I did it. Yeah. I did the Ryman there for the same reason.
Yeah, so I went out there and I was like, everyone was like, I don't know, it's the first place they did the Grand Ole Opry, Elvis, Hank Williams, whatever. And you're like, yeah. Another theater. And you walk in, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I just had like that magic in it. And I was went out and I had this great set, and that's just, you know, you just stick it in the card catalog going, all right, next time I have, I was like, I just burned all this material, so I got to write a whole new hour and come back here. And so next time, you know, I go to shoot something, I think that was about a month before I did the Tabernacle for my one previous to that. So I already knew, which was cool, before I wrote my next hour where I was going to shoot it. So
Are you on a 2-year schedule, you think? You think that's the way to do it?
roughly 2 years, but I have like a vibe of when, like this one was overcooked, and just because I got real busy with F is for Family, I would have liked to have taped it like about 6 months earlier, but it made it, I think it made it better or whatever, but I would have, just as far as, you know what I mean, it's kind of like in this business, there's that thing, you don't want to be overexposed, but then you don't want to wait too long, so you got to try to, and then that's also not like oh, so-and-so successful and he waits X amount of time, so I'm going to do the exact thing. It's really like whatever you're trying to do. So it's kind of different for different people. Like those YouTube stars, like their thing is all about just constantly putting out stuff.
Yeah.
Where I think the road that I'm on is, you know, like right now I'm out there promoting this shit. And then once it comes out and everybody's seeing it and they're liking it and then I'm done promoting it, then I just sort of disappear until F is for Family comes out. I'm kind of a big believer in that. Of, you know, be out there when you got something that's going on. Don't just do shit to do shit.
Right.
I call that like extra TV. Hey, he's just here to be here.
Right.
And now he's over there. There's that guy again. Then, because I find myself, people that I'm fans of starting to hate people going like, can't fucking get away from this fucking guy. And then I'm thinking like, do I actually hate this person or I don't know what it is, but there's definitely a tipping point.
You know who's real smart about that? Daniel Tosh. He doesn't do shit. He doesn't do a fucking thing. He sells out everywhere he goes. He's got millions of dollars, so he's like, I don't need to do shit. I'm overexposed as it is. My show's on constantly. I'm not doing nothing. He won't do interviews, doesn't do podcasts.
Yeah, Adam Sandler's another guy.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler doesn't do, I'm trying to think the last time I saw him promote a movie, and yet I see all of his movies.
Yeah.
And then I just hear through the grapevine, oh, he signed some big thing with Netflix. All his movies are going to be over there. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm watching them over there. And I've always just sort of like, and it wasn't until I talked to somebody, like, yeah, he doesn't do any press.
Good for him.
Basic.
Smart.
I might be wrong, but from what I heard, he does very little if he does any.
Yeah, no, he's smart. He's got his core audience, you know. I watched Jack and Jill with my kids, with my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old. It is fucking hilarious.
I love
when
his
you
movies.
when you watch a really silly movie with a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're literally falling off the couch laughing.
That's awesome.
And you realize, like, oh, he's making movies for little kids. Like people who get mad at it, you know, like, oh, those movies are stupid. Not if you're 6. If you're 6, they're fucking awesome.
Or what if you just get in a stupid movie?
Yeah.
That's what I like. I don't want to fucking think every time I go see him. Sometimes I just want somebody to make me laugh.
Right.
I liked the Zohan one.
I love that movie.
Yeah, when his foot was coming up was hilarious. Dude, I remember when I was living with Bobby Kelly, we watched Waterboy, Bobby Boucher. We watched that thing like fucking 900 times. Like, it was kind of like our go-to. You know, if we didn't have spots, you try to kill a day. We just we had the little VHS thing.
Yes.
Yes. I probably saw that movie at least 30, 40 times.
Yeah, and then Happy Gilmore. I saw Happy Gilmore at least 10 times. That's a fucking great movie.
I forget the name of the last one he did was Spade, when he was he worked at the bank in the supermarket. Did you watch that one? That was his first Netflix one. It came out like last year.
No, I didn't see it.
My short-term memory is short, but that was a funny one too.
No, his movies they're always consistently that way. You know, that kind of movie.
No, and I like that they're unapologetically silly.
Yeah.
Because you know, he's a guy that gets a lot of shit and he just doesn't give a shit. It's like, oh, all right, you didn't like this one, here's another one that made $1 zillion.
Yeah, avoid the press. Find your core audience, do what you gotta do. Yeah. I like that, what you're doing. Like, I like that sort of schedule. I feel like that's kind of like the same amount of time that I do. Around 1.5 years, I start thinking, this thing's about done. You know?
Right.
And a year in, I feel like, well, I could kind of pull it off, but not really.
You don't want to do that. You don't want. You take it out of the oven too soon, then there's just like that. You know.
Yeah.
Inside was still a little mushy.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, you go out there and you kick the shit out of them every couple of years. Hopefully they like it, and then they'll come see you again on your next tour.
Yeah.
And that's all you owe them, and that's all they owe you. It's just like, I saw your last one. You're still in my wheelhouse of people I'm going to go see. But the second you fuck up, I'm not going to go see you. And you can't ask fans to do any more than that. Be like,
No.
well, what about the other stuff I did that didn't suck? It's like,
No.
yeah, but your last thing sucked, and there's too much unbelievable stuff being put out, so you got to kind of try and keep up.
Yeah, Ari Shaffir had a real good point about that too. He said that at one point in time, comedians used to have, they used to do a special, and it was like their best special, like an HBO special, and then they would slide off. They would all slide off, every one of them. Like Kinnison's the worst. Like Kinnison, you watch Kinnison's first special, and then you watch, like, listen to Louder Than Hell, that cassette, and watch his first HBO special. Fucking genius, just balls out. And if you don't get it, I understand, because it's not 1986 anymore. But if you were in 1986 and you saw that, you would have been blown away. You would have been like in the presence of greatness. Like,
No, he's on my Mount Rushmore, that guy.
Me too. But then the stuff after that was dog shit. It got worse and worse and worse.
He kind of, as far as I can I never met the guy, but just as far as watching him as a fan, he kind of seemed like he stepped in every single pitfall of being, of getting some fame.
Yep.
Everything, like not trying as hard.
Coke, girls.
Yeah. Showing up late to shit.
Hanging out with Bon Jovi.
Getting a bad reputation. No, Motley Crue. He wasn't
Bon Jovi too. Bon Jovi, yeah, it was one of his early specials. Like Bon Jovi was on the beginning of his special.
I just remember he drove Motley Crue to the Whiskey for the Kickstart My Heart video.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I'm a child of the 80s, dude.
Oh, that's a great video. That fucking Kickstart My Heart still, to this day, when that comes on at the gym, I get fired up.
Oh, it's a great song.
It's a great fucking
The
song.
dialogue in the beginning is brutal, though. He goes, here we are. He gets something like, this is where it all began. And the guy goes, and then somebody in the car goes, yeah. And then he goes, home sweet home. And then they all go, yeah.
Oh, God. Pull that up. Pull that up,
really,
Jamie. Give me some volume.
Dude, it was the 80s, though. It was...
Kinnison's driving.
Yeah, Kinnison's driving. But Tommy Lee's drums in this are fucking amazing, man.
Wow. You forget how long these guys have been around and how long Tommy Lee's been around. How are his arms not falling off? Give me a little volume on that, Jamie. I want to hear this. Fuck yeah. This is the best treadmill song of all time. If you're on the fucking treadmill... that you did it? It's a fucking great song for working out, man. I think this is their best song ever.
I played this at the Comedy Jam with Josh and those.
Did you really? Oh, wow. You were explaining to me something before the podcast started. I wanted you to talk about it on the podcast because you were talking about drum technique and you had like a slow motion video of how you do it and you're kind of letting the stick do a lot of the work.
Yeah, I got this great teacher, Dave Elitch, who played with everybody from Mars Volta to Miley Cyrus. So whatever your gig is, like total progressive, crazy. I can't even, some of the music he's played, I don't even know where one is. And then he can also just do the straight pop tour or whatever. But his technique is incredible. The first time I saw him play, he's got this drum cam. I should show it to you. Literally, I'm looking at it, and with layman's eyes, I was like, "How is this guy's arms not falling off?" But his technique, as I've gone and taken lessons for well over a year with him, now I can watch it on a different level as far as like his technique is sick. So he's not fucking his arms up and everything. He's moving his arms, giving people a show, but like it's hard to explain like. First of all, I'm not a professional drummer, but it's also hard to explain like over a podcast. But like it's letting the stick do the work, and he kind of equated it to like if you're like dribbling like a ball or something like that, or maybe this was somebody else. Like if you dribble a basketball, it's like every time it comes up to your hand, once you get it going, you're not slamming it back down to the floor. You're just sort of controlling the rebound. It has something sort of to do. There it is. This is the one. Like if you play, turn up the volume. This is just gonna bore the shit out of people.
No, it's not. You see it in his hands, how loose his hands are.
See when he just opens his hand like that? He's getting,
Well, you know
this guy's a fucking animal, man.
You love drumming, huh? You're fucking really deep into this shit.
It's literally, I tried therapy, I tried talking to people and shit, and it's just like, I only get so far, but like, that stuff like just totally clears my head, and I like it because it's like comedy where there's somewhere to go with it, and it's endless. Like there's really no end to how good you can come as a comic if you keep pushing yourself with these little skill sets that they're kind of weak and you can just keep making, working on. Drumming's the same way. So it's that going for the next thing that has me just present, trying to work it out, and I just forget about everything else. And I even got a kid now. My wife still lets me go play for an hour a day because she knows it's good for us.
So that's it's like a meditation on top of like a little bit of a workout too, because you're throwing your arms around.
Oh yeah.
They're all shredded. Like you do look at guys like Travis Barker and Tommy Lee. Those guys have jacked veins. They're all shredded.
Yeah. Well, that part of that I think is also like if you just sort of struggle. There's also something too, and I'm not talking about anybody you just mentioned, but there is something about if you do heroin in your 20s, you're kind of like shredded for life. I don't know what I don't know what it is. Iggy Pop, I don't know if he did heroin. If you did hard drugs,
oh, he definitely did.
Those guys are like, guys are just shredded. It's very rare that after you come out of that. Keith Richards, all of those guys, Keith Richards is like, you could pick that guy up with 2 fucking fingers.
Yeah, he's all sinew.
Yeah, he's all like, it's like he's did Pilates. Nah, just shot heroin for like 3 years. Look at Iggy. He's still shredded. His skin, skin is giving up. Like he's losing the elasticity, but he's still shredded.
I saw him
naked
there. Yeah, his body is very odd.
I saw him in, you're looking at him now when he's like 70. I saw him with Queens of the Stone Age backing him up. I saw him downtown LA.
How long ago?
Like fucking about a year ago. And
wow.
This is what I loved about the guy. He went out there and like one song in, he had his fucking shirt off. He just didn't give a shit.
He's the Bert Kreischer of music.
Yeah, and that's why I like, when they give Madonna shit for twerking at 58, it's like, who gives a fuck? I mean, there is something, there is something to be said about, it's all how you do it. He did it, I felt like he didn't give a fuck. But if you're kind of doing it as this desperate thing, still trying to be like good looking, then it gets a little, I guess it gets a little cheesy.
The Madonna thing, it's not the twerking, it's the shit that she says with the twerking. Like, I'll suck everyone's dick who doesn't vote for Trump, like that kind of stuff. Like, really?
Well, hey, dude, she's been able to hang around for fucking 40 years doing it. It works.
I know, but it's just like, don't do that anymore. What if a tooth falls out? What if you're blowing somebody and it just goes wrong? She's 70 years old or something. She's 85 years old. She's 122 years old.
58. 10 years older than me. She's in better shape than I'll ever be in.
She seems a lot older than that. Doesn't she? I mean, when we were kids, she was already a grown woman.
When she broke, she was like 25, I think. She made it quick.
I remember when I was in high school, I've told the story before, but when I was like 16, I was in love with her, and I found out she was 27, and I was like, that bitch is old. Jesus Christ. I thought 27 was ancient.
You were kicking him to the curb at 16?
I just thought she was so old.
Bag. She hadn't even hit her prime yet.
I know. It was retarded. I was 16. I didn't know any better, but I just remember hearing she was in her late 20s. Oh, it's over. Look at that. That was when she was kind of chubby too.
I did think 27 though when I was a kid. Like when I would see a 27-year-old guy, I used to think that's a man.
Yeah.
He's got it figured out.
Yeah.
He's on his own.
Yeah.
All this bullshit I'm going through is all sorted out in his fucking head. I used to think that. Now
I had a whole bit about that.
48, and I'm just like gonna be 49 this year, and I'm just like still figuring shit out.
I had a whole bit about remember when you were a kid and you thought they were real grown-ups. Like you were confused, you get yelled at, you get sent to your room. You're like, one day I'm gonna be a grown-up and everything's gonna make sense. And then one day you're in line at the supermarket and someone goes, paper or plastic, sir? And you're like, sir? I'm a sir? Am I a grown-up?
Yeah.
Fuck, this is it? And then you realize there's no grown-ups. There's just a bunch of babies who got older. And they're all pretending. And they look like they're grown up to you because you're on the outside. But once you become one of them, you realize there is no grown-ups.
There's some out there. There's some men and women out there. I'm not one of them.
Have you met one?
Yeah.
Like who? Name one.
I've met a few as far as like in this business, as far as like people just like, I would say anybody like they have like, they're super successful in this business, and they just go home. You know what I mean? They just go home. Like that's an adult.
Right. You don't
like they
stay
go to
out
work,
and
they fucking
do blow
crush it.
and-
If there is an after party, they make their appearance. They have a little seltzer water, and they're gone. And they get 8 hours sleep. They're talking to their wife and their kids. Like to me, those are adults. To do what I do is, to still go out and fucking have a couple of whiskeys and wake up a little hungover going, oh, God, why did I do that? For the 9 millionth time in my life. Like, I'm not an adult.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anyone like that that's a comic. I don't know anybody that's really funny that has it all totally together. I've never met one. Ever.
Yeah.
Name one.
No.
They don't exist.
That's funny?
Yeah, they don't exist. They're all fucked up a little bit. Just a little. I mean, keeping it together, like paying your taxes, showing up on time, all that good stuff.
Right.
Adult-like. But every one of us is one
This is getting
shitty.
depressing.
No, it's not bad. But every one of us is one shitty decision from a disaster. Every one of us at any
That's
point in
why
time.
when I watch people, I don't know, when I watch them fuck up their lives, like there's always the first feeling I have is panic when I see it. I'm like, oh God.
Imagine what they're thinking, right? You imagine yourself in their position.
God, man, what if I did that?
Yeah. Like when you see someone pulled over for drunk driving, like, fuck. Oh no. Oh no.
The whole fucking thing, giving your money to the wrong people, they mismanagement, you
Oh.
fucking go broke, becoming a fucking alkie.
I just read something about
Here's
Rampage.
Here's one, banging the maid.
Oh, the banging the maid's a good
Banging the
one.
maid or the nanny.
Yeah.
You can't have a maid or a nanny in your
Yeah.
life.
Well, if you do, they have to be disgusting.
That's like the...
Didn't Ben Affleck bang his nanny? He did, right?
That was never
Yeah.
confirmed. That was never confirmed.
Oh, she confirmed it.
Yeah, but what does that mean? She needs a book deal? She got fired? Who knows?
Unless he came out and said, I never fucked her. And he never
Jesus,
did that.
dude, you gonna do that to him?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of his.
You know, you didn't like the town?
No, I didn't like him. He went on Bill Maher show. Got in this ridiculous argument with Sam Harris. I realized what it was all about. I was like, oh, you're one of those guys. He's like calling Sam Harris racist because he was talking about the problem with ideologies and religions and the tenets of Islam. He started yelling at him, calling him a racist. And didn't really understand that Sam Harris is actually a scholar. He knows a lot about religion and just got way over his head and looked really stupid.
So the only difference between me and him is he did that on TV and I do it over the phone with my friends.
The only difference is you're funny. You're funny, and if you did it, you have self-deprecating humor. You would have, like, what the fuck am I talking about? I don't know shit.
Go talk
Yeah.
to the guy at the gas station I just stopped at right before I got here when I found out they didn't take credit cards.
What happened?
They just didn't take, I was...
You got mad at him?
I was a cunt to him.
Really?
Yeah. Because what it was I was getting up against being here by 11, and I got to get home to take my wife out of the house because she's going nuts staying in the house with the kids. So I got that thing, and I got to sign this other fucking, life insurance. I got to do all this adult shit. And I'm thinking, I got this little window to get gas. And I show up in this fucking industrial park. There's no gas station. I finally went all the way down. And the whole time it was like, it's thrifty. And I'm thinking, like, isn't that a fucking car rental place? So I pull in, and I stick to credit. Right as I stuck it in, I'm going, this is too easy. Because I know I have the exact amount of time to get here right on time. And of course, it's just like, is this debit? I'm like, oh, you cunt. I'm like, no. And they go in and see the guy behind the register. And I'm like, yeah, I tried to use my credit card. And he goes, we don't take credit cards here. And I go, why? He goes, I just take debit card. I just kept saying why, like a fucking 2-year-old. And he finally just goes, so it's cheaper. And I was like, all right, that's a good excuse. And I gave him like $60, and it only ended up being like 39. So then I had to go back in and get my change. And he's looking at me like, see, fucking idiot. It would have cost you like 15 more. So I do that all the time.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those fucking debit card only ones. That's stupid.
Why not? You never use your debit card. Use your credit card anyway.
Why? What happened?
Because that's your money. So
Yeah.
if somebody takes that and then cleans you out, that's your shit. If somebody swipes your credit card number, that's their money. So then they call you up and they just go, hey, Joe, did you buy a ham hock in fucking Vancouver at a strip club? Why, no, I didn't. I was in Burbank. Good luck with that. Whatever
Has
the fuck.
anybody ever bought a ham hock in a
Yeah.
strip club?
Dude, you've given me every piece of the fucking elk except that.
I've got some ham hock for you. Some bone you can chop
Yeah.
up and make marrow with.
So I got a buddy of mine who's a lawyer who prosecutes identity theft, which a lot of lawyers don't want to do because it's unbelievably tedious. And when they call up, a lot of times they're calling up the credit card companies to fight for their case. They still have to go through that maze. If you'd like to do this, press 1. If you'd like to do that, press 2. And they're trying to help them out. So, but that was one thing that I remembered out of all the things he told me not to do. Don't ever use your debit card. They get that and you're like, that's your fucking money. you know, and then all of a sudden you got a mortgage coming up, and then you're late, and you're like, no, but somebody took my money, and blah, blah, blah. Your credit card, they have to deal with it.
I had an attempt recently, and I'm thinking, I'm wondering whether or not it's because I switched over to Windows. Because, you know, I have this Windows computer now. I get pissed off at Mac. People get mad at us clearing our throat, and I just clear my throat again. I switched over to this Windows computer because I get mad these Macs. They switched over all the ports, and now you have this USB-C, and you have to get an adapter if you want to use all your other shit to it.
I know.
Like,
I got Rosetta Stone French, right? I can't. There's no place to stick the fucking.
Yeah, you have to get an adapter. So I was like, what the fuck?
How about the iPhone 7 with the little fucking umbilical
the
cord?
lightning thing? Yeah, well, you can get a splitter with that where it goes with you can use a regular headphone jack.
But it's all extra money.
Yeah.
It's all extra money, and then you fucking lose them.
I think the idea is that eventually there's going to be some peripherals that are more powerful and they don't work on the existing ports. But, you know, like I got this Lenovo ThinkPad, and I love it. And this is the second one that I got because it's got everything. It's got an Ethernet port. It's got HDMI. It's got all this shit. It's tiny. The battery life is fucking forever. It's got this fat battery in the bottom. But for the first time in a long time, somebody tried to steal my identity. And I'm like, geez, I wonder if it has to do with that. I wonder if it's a Windows thing. Does that make sense? Not really? Could be. Could be something else. I don't know. But it's sneaky. Yeah. But at least when I have a business management company, they contact me. They put the stop to it right away.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's disconcerting that your shit's out there. You know, someone's trying to find your social security number, attach it to your credit card, and buy something. Yeah.
Yep.
I've had it happen at gas stations where they put that fake scanner on. They put a fake scanner over the scanner, so as you scan through, you even are using it. Like you're using your credit card, you're buying gas, but you gave them your credit card information.
Yeah, I've 2 times credit cards. That's happened at gas stations. Restaurants are another big double swipe thing.
Yeah, restaurants. Well, that's people that work there, scumbags. Yeah.
You gotta go. You gotta go cash as much as you can.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
This never happened. You don't know me.
I know a guy, he's dead now, but he was one of the first credit card thieves. And his name was International Sal. That's what we used to call him, because when he got arrested, that was what his nickname was International Sal. Because this is in like the 70s or the 80s when credit cards first came out. He would get those carbon slips from restaurants, and they would make up new credit cards and then sell them to criminals. And he would just get bags and bags of cash from them. And this guy was gambling. He would go to the pool hall that I went to, and he was like the most perpetual loser you've ever seen in your life. Like he could not win. It was a psychological.
It sounds like an Oscar-winning movie.
Yeah.
This guy's life.
Well, in a way, it probably should be. I mean, he was a trip.
So how did he end up dying?
Cancer. Bad. Colon cancer. It was real bad. And a buddy of mine's
That's
wife.
where Hollywood would switch up the script. It's just too common.
Go off a bridge like Thelma and Louise.
That's what happened to me the other night when I was on stage. And I was joking about men going to the moon, and somebody yelled out, "Go see Hidden Figures." And I was like, yeah, because that's a history book. Like, I just love how people, I'm not saying obviously those women existed, but like, then now they're going to do the overcorrection, where it was like, these 3 women.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, every
They're doing
time
that.
you see a picture of like NASA, you'll see like 1,000, like 100 worker bees. Nobody knows their fucking names. It's like, we got there because of all of those people. But it's just like, it's like when a team wins a championship. Like if the Patriots win, it's going to be all about Tom Brady. You know, no one's going to know the fucking offensive line's name. And if the Falcons win, it's going to be about, you know, I don't know, Julio Jones or Matt Ryan. You know these guys.
Yeah, you would know this. Tom Brady's got some wacky diet. There was some article about Tom Brady's diet being bullshit. Do you know about Tom Brady's diet? He's got some crazy diet.
No, I don't get into people's personal lives. Like
he talks about it.
I watch the game. No, but I wouldn't. If
You don't pay
they
attention?
had like Tom Brady talks about beans and fucking rice.
You
like,
don't give a fuck?
No, I just want to watch the game. I don't watch pre-game. I don't watch post-game. I don't need you to break it down for me. I watched it. You know, I like, there's certain people that if they were to break it down, it's the same thing with like what you do. There's certain things, like the reason why I like your commentating was I learned about like the leg kicks and all, like you always hammer that home, how much that just chops the other guy down. Aside from the fact is, you know, I've been kicked in the shin, everybody has, and I've gotten a Charlie horse, and I just don't understand, like that one that Conor McGregor had against what's his face there, Ortiz? Not Ortiz. I'm the worst with the names. It's farther than the second time. The guy,
Diaz? Nate Diaz?
Diaz. When just watching him repeatedly kick him in the leg, and then in the end, McGregor leaves on crutches. It's just like
broke his foot.
Yeah, like how much is your adrenaline
going like crazy? You don't feel a thing.
Yeah, that you can just keep kicking somebody in their leg, hitting their bone with the top bone of your whatever was it, your metatarsals, whatever the hell it is, and just keep doing. I can just picture myself kicking the guy once, going just grabbing it and hopping up and down like the guy on Family Guy.
Yeah, most of the time you don't feel it while it's happening. I broke my shin, I broke my foot, I broke both feet. Kick elbows. Elbows are a way that a lot of times guys break it. Because guys will cover up and your foot, like your instep will slam into the elbow. Your instep always loses. Always. Shins.
Now when the adrenaline wears off and you realize you've broken your instep, kicking someone as hard as you can in their elbow, what is that pain?
It's agony. Just throbbing. Your foot swells up to like the size of your thigh. It just becomes this big balloon of black and blue, and it's disgusting.
You know, it's funny, after watching my wife, going through labor and everything, I said the only men that could actually relate would be people who do that for a fucking living.
Like people who fight, they couldn't even relate.
It's worse than that.
Yeah, it's genitals. It's genitals. It's coming out of your vagina. It's crazy.
No, I got a whole new level of respect for my wife. I was just like,
oh yeah.
She told me the funniest fucking thing. And she went into like pre-labor, and I was just going, telling her to breathe, and I was running to get the stuff, I was pretty prepared. And there was some code or something like that. I was like, Nia, where did you leave the blah, 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 blah? She goes, when you said that to me, she goes, I was almost ready to black out with the pain. And she goes, I had this thought, if he asked me one more time where that code is, I'm going to push this baby out and fucking throw it at him. Dude, my wife is hilarious.
She's funny on your podcast too.
No,
she's very funny.
She's funnier than a lot of comedians I know. She's fucking hilarious, and but she has this. What I love about her, she's got this spirit, man. She's just really like. When I met her, man, like I had never met anybody like. There's very few people I've met in my life that have like an energy where you just like, wow. Like I want to be around her. Like she just had this amazing, like really like she just throws herself into shit, and I was really kind of. I was more like guarded and all of that, so it was sort of the perfect kind of balance. But every time I think I've seen the end of that energy, like she does something else. So it was pretty amazing.
So that's a great relationship. Then you're both growing. She's growing and you're.
Oh yeah, no, dude, she's hit me with some fucking classic lines. And one time she, I was calling her out on some shit she was doing. And I just took it like a little too far. I should have stopped like probably 5 minutes earlier, and I was still going. I go, you fucking blah, 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 blah. And you do this, that, and I was in the car. Right as I stopped, she goes, yeah, well, you're no pony ride either, my friend. And we both just bursted out laughing. And that was just like the end of the fight. So she has that ability where in the past, I would date people either they were like too nice, so they couldn't handle how fucked up I was, or the worst, they were just as fucked up as I was and was totally toxic. So she's just sort of like grounded.
Yeah,
and,
that's so important when you're dating somebody or married to somebody or whatever. They have to compliment you, and you have to compliment them in some sort of a way. You can't be exactly the same, and who you are is different when you're with different people. You know? If you're with a person like that who can crack a joke in the middle of the heat of everything, you become a different person. They become a different person.
Yeah.
But if she's with someone who doesn't appreciate that, it's just like you become, like, you're not just an individual. You're an individual who relates to other people, and you become someone different when you relate to those people.
Yeah. It took me forever to realize that.
Yeah, there's people that
the
are
way I
bad for you.
processed it was, how come I can't break up with this person? That's how I figured out I was in love.
Well, that's a good one to do.
Yeah, no, every time I pictured breaking up with her, I kept picturing her walking away and then me going like, no, get back. Then after denying that was love for a good fucking 8 years, I was just like, yeah, I guess I have found the one.
That's an abused word, love. There's way too many people throwing that word around like a beach ball at a concert. It's just too abused.
Dude, all of that shit, and then like all of the stuff that people say that when you first see your kid, all like they fill your head up on what the fuck you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
I was talking about this on, I think on Kimmel. Like when I saw my kid for the first time, I was like afraid. Like I didn't have that. Oh my god! I just started crying. I was just like, hey, and I sort of just put my finger down, let it like hold, and when they left me alone with them for the first time, like the magnitude of it was definitely huge. But I didn't feel that whole like, you know, the second I saw my kid, I knew my life had changed. But I didn't feel that for like 12 hours. It wasn't until the next, but because my head was so filled up on what I was supposed to. I was like having an outer body experience.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the next morning my wife was playing like Stevie Wonder, you know what I mean, some chill music and stuff, and I was just sitting with her, and it just sort of, and baby sneezes or something like that, you just fucking hit shit.
Yeah.
But even then, I never had like that blubbering moment.
To me, it was kind of scary too, and kind of psychedelic, because when my daughter was born, my 8-year-old was born, there was a moment when I was thinking, how many babies are being born simultaneously right now all over the world? And if you could look at it on a screen, it would be a swarm of humanity, just heads popping out of pussies, just just if you could see every baby coming out right now. And then I thought, at the same time, I thought about this baby becoming an old lady and dying. And I thought, like, how many old people are dying simultaneously at the same time right now?
Yeah, see, I think it's important just to say that, because the hacky thing is you're supposed to say, the second I saw my kid, I bursted out crying, and blah, 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 blah. And then it becomes like, if you don't do that, you're not going to be a good dad, you don't care, and all of that type of stuff. But I just think that kind of became like the hacky default thing. And then I also, this is all just theories, of course, and I'm not going to research any of this, but I think parents try to outdo each other with their stories about what the fuck they felt, and it's just become like they're really like, they're not sane people, most parents.
No.
And I've learned to kind of already be like, don't just sit down next to you like you're Forrest Gump, and they'll just sit down and just start talking to you. So you just have your kid, all right, that's what you got to watch out for. You know, I remember my kid, blah, blah, blah. Dude, it's like Airplane. You know what I mean? Where the fucking person, he talks to him and you want to kill yourself.
Just wait until you start going to school. And you gotta hang out with these parents all the time, because your kids become friends with their kids, and then you become friends with these people that you would never be fucking friends with.
This is what I do, is I just look straight ahead and I don't look at them, I don't respond to what they're saying, and then they just sort of talk quietly and gradually leave.
You're gonna have to go to dinner with them, your wife's gonna be friends with some lady, you're gonna, let's go on a double date, okay, fine, you're gonna go. This one guy I know, he talks and he doesn't look at you. He tells me these fucking stupid stories about his kid and the basketball team, and he looks at you for a second. So Adam's in this basketball, and then he starts looking down. He's like, the coach won't put him in the game. And I'm saying, like, he's a good player. He's a good player. How come you're not putting him in the game? And he's fucking rambling with no regard whatsoever for your attention span, the entertainment value of what he's saying. He's just...
The underlying insecurity of not being able to look at you, or he's so self-involved.
He's self-involved. He's doing some weird thing with his hands. Where he's like talking with his hands, and I'm going, Jesus Christ! Like, it's literally like someone's crushing me.
What do you fantasize about doing to him?
Oh, just running away. I don't want to hurt him. The guy's hurt by life. He's so damaged by life. I don't want to do anything to him. I just want to get the fuck away.
I always picture those people when I have a giant roll of duct tape. I just put it on there. It's like a cartoon level speed. No, it's cartoon level. I just put it on their mouth and I go. And the last one, it comes up and over their head, and then it hangs down. The whole rest of the tape is hanging down over their head.
Awkwardly.
And then I just go back to eating or whatever, and they just sit there and slowly have to take it off.
There's some brutal fucking people. It's, there's a bunch of weird people that you get closer to them and closer to them, and you find out about their life.
Yeah, but you know what? All those people I want to do that to, I'm sure they're talking about me. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure they talk about me too. That's just how it goes.
It just seemed like he was in a bad mood.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. There's his friend Ron Whites, who's a friend of mine, who the first time he met me, he was like, oh, I don't know. And Ron's like, I'm telling you, he's a good guy. Like, he's a dad too, and we're all buddies together now. But he's like, I don't know. I'm guarded. I've been beaten down by some of these fucking basketball stories that these assholes will tell you. And my kid, he's a good player. He's a good player. You just won't put him in game. Just you think of things that you would torture somebody talking about, and you're like, I would never do this to you. Why are you doing this to me? Like, you're not even thinking about
it. It's like verbal waterboarding. You're like in your own little Guantanamo.
That's a great way to describe it.
Just being like, when is the dessert tray coming so I could say I don't need dessert?
That's part of the problem with hanging around with comedians, too. Is when they say something, like, for a good percentage of it is funny. It doesn't have to be funny all the time, but a good percentage. When you're talking to people that aren't funny at all, and it never comes, like, surely there's something funny coming. Eventually? Nothing? Never? Never.
Something compelling.
Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. Just,
and that's when I start thinking like those duct tape fantasies, and then I start making myself laugh, and I have to pretend like I'm drinking, and then they get all weirded out because they see some weird look on my face, and it's the whole thing just fucking, it just goes south.
Yeah, I usually breathe. I take these breathing exercises. I do the Wim Hof method, where I take all my breath in, then I let like 15-20% out.
There's no way you do that across from a person. Well, I guess if he's not looking at you, he doesn't see it.
Yeah, I do. I do it like this. Watch, ready?
Dude, you look like you just got shot and you're waiting for the ambulance when you're doing it. Like you're just trying to hold up the...
Okay. Keep it together.
Stay conscious. Stay conscious.
Keep it together. Try to stay present. Try to meditate in the face of overwhelming, retarded conversation. Just try to detach myself from whatever they're saying. Find a happy place. Find a peaceful spot. You ever get Rolf? You know what Rolfing is?
It's a form of like deep tissue inside.
Brutally painful shit. Brutally painful. I get Rolfed, and this guy that does it, he's fucking rough. And he knows how to do it.
Hey, I tell you, this guy's rough.
You know? He has a metal bar. I mean, it seems like a torture device. It looks like a chisel, like a fat, wide chisel, and it has like a thin layer of like rubber over it. And he takes this metal bar, and it has like a handle, like a sword.
Where
he's
wearing a gimp mask at this point.
I'm naked, unfortunately. And he's digging this fucking thing into my back. I mean, digging it in, like all of his weight, and he's like popping over the scar tissue. And I have to go deep into my mind when he's doing it. I just go deeper and deeper. My eyes are closed, my face is in that thing. You know, when you get a massage, and that's after you can see my face, it'd be like pushed and smushed into that little massage chair thing or massage table thing.
It's like you're doing that Red Bull jump from the outer space.
My buddy is a world champion for that shit. He's traveled more in that flying squirrel suit. He's traveled to further distances than anybody.
Dude, that Red Bull jump, that fucking guy, he was just falling like a stone
from space.
Over.
Yeah. How about the guy that fell into a net? Did you see that one?
I just did the comic thing, and I totally derailed you.
No, it's okay. I find my happy space while this guy's doing this, and I have to do that. I literally, I think I go just deeper and deeper in my mind to ignore the pain, because the pain is so intense.
The only way I could get through that basketball guy is if I already told my wife that he did it and it annoyed me. And then what I would do is I would just be egging him on, going like, so why doesn't he play him? and just keep going. And then she would start kicking me under the table because she would start laughing. And then I would have to turn what he was doing into a show. That's the only way to do it. Or else I'm just going to, I would probably, if I actually dealt with the emotion of those kinds of moments, I would probably start crying. I would probably just break down and be like, I don't want to fucking do this.
Well, I just feel like I have to talk to the guy. I feel like I wish I could like get him high on ecstasy and talk to him. Just get him to completely remove all of his insecurities and fears. And I'd be like, man, when you talk to people, you got to be thinking that they're listening to you.
I can give a great suggestion for if you have to keep going on with a couple like that, you got to get the corner booth. So then you're not directly across from each other. So then you don't have to look at him. You can just sit there in your meditation nodding, and he's not going to be looking at you and see it in his peripheral as if you're actively listening. And you could be looking, at the...
Doesn't matter with this guy.
The aquarium.
He'll get you. I think he's a little on the spectrum. There's something going on there.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
There's a detachment. There's a detachment to the way he communicates, where it just seems like socially he's not present. It's very odd method of communication.
Yep, I knew somebody like that.
You can't talk to the guy and like I'd want to like tell him like, I get, you have this thing, but it's got to be fun for the other person to hear. Like, there's got to be something there. And, you know, we've all done something like that. We've all said something that someone didn't want to listen to.
Oh,
for
not
sure.
Me.
No?
Not me.
Never?
Oh, no. I walk in wearing a scarf, kind of like a hero.
A scarf and those Snoopy aviator goggles.
That's right. That's right. Everybody wants to hear my bullshit.
So there was that guy that jumped, right? He jumped somewhere and he fell into a net. He didn't even have a parachute. They had like a gigantic net somewhere, right? Wasn't that what it was? How far did he fall?
25,000 feet.
Jesus Christ. Look at this guy. So he's skydiving 25,000 feet and he doesn't have a parachute.
He's doing tricks.
What the fuck kind of impact must that have been like? Oh, Jesus, look at him. And at the very last minute, he has to turn around. So he's steering himself, and at the very last minute, Jesus, what kind of fear? At the very last minute, he has to turn. Look at that. Holy shit, that's insane. I mean, how fast is he going at that point?
So now he's not moving.
Now he's crying because he can't believe he got away with it, and he doesn't know why the fuck he did it. What
I
a
know why he did it.
crazy
You know what I want to
asshole.
hear? I want to hear his opening line to a woman in a bar. I bet it's the worst thing. Like, literally to compensate, rather than just, you know, getting a book. Hey, baby, what's your sign? He's got to do this shit and then talk about it loudly in the vicinity of women.
Luke Akins is his name. Jesus Christ. My buddy Andy Stump, he holds the world record for the longest in one of those flying bodysuits, the longest distance. What did he travel, like 30 miles or something fucking nuts?
What did he jump off of?
He jumps off everything, planes, whatever. He'll jump off a rocket if you let him. He's crazy. He's a Navy SEAL. He's out of his fucking mind. Out of his mind.
Those squirrel suits look fun as shit, though.
Oh, yeah.
I would never do it, but that looks fun as hell.
They get real close to the ground, and then they hit the ground occasionally. And then they, well, he's just
that
telling
guy
me the
on
other day.
Brian Gumbel, Real Sports. He's like his fucking toes.
Oh, that's right. He clipped something with his toes.
He
And
just like, they came back to Brian Gumbel. Brian Gumbel's like, guy has a bit of a death wish, and the other reporter's like, yeah, he does. He was just laying on the ground, like moaning in this agony. The worst agony I've ever heard, though, was that. Please don't. I'm not going to tell you what it is because then you're going to play it. It like haunted me. I'll tell you. This guy on one of these YouTube videos, the guy who was climbing up the tree to chop it down or something, and he just fell, and he went straight down and shattered both of his legs. And dude,
don't pull that up.
I've always look away. These sound. He was just in the woods because he had filmed himself doing. He was just in the woods. He was just like, like fucking over and over again, just like his soul. I mean, like if he had a fucking loaded 9mm within reach, he would have blew his brains out. Like that was the level of pain.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that happens a lot of guys when they make tree stands. They set up tree stands, and some guys are tough guys. They don't want to wear a harness. Like they have these harnesses that most people wear. They strap around your waist, they strap around your legs, and then it hooks to the tree. So you can't fall off the tree. But there's a lot of guys that want to be tough guys. So they climb up these tree stands, and they don't have a harness on, and they fall off the tree stand. And, you know, you're falling 30 feet, whatever it is, and you're just fucked up.
And then you got to crawl your way out of the woods.
Or not. Or someone finds you days later and you starve to death.
Has anybody fallen out of the tree stand and then getting eaten by what they were just going to kill?
I'm sure that's happened for bears, because people go bear hunting, and they go bear hunting in tree stands. I guarantee you someone's been eaten that way. 100%. 1,000%. No chance it hasn't
I would never
happened.
have enough confidence in my ability to secure a tree stand correctly past a certain height, knowing that a bear was going to be coming to. That's just those two factors of falling that length, and then also, and maybe right in front of a bear.
What's more fucked up is how fast the bear can get up a tree. Bears can.
Oh, I've seen that one.
They run up a fucking tree like they're running on the ground. It's insane. Like only up to a certain size. That's what's weird. Like when they get to be like 400 pounds plus, they really can't make it up trees anymore. They're too heavy. Their nails can't like support their body weight.
They're on the
They're
biggest
too big.
loser for grizzlies. They're making them wade in the water to get the salmon. I don't want to do it.
It's really more black bears than grizzlies will run up trees, but they run up those fucking trees. They just and they're up. Like you can't.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video of a guy like he's like, you know, in one of those stands, and the fucking thing looks up and just runs up the tree next to him, and now it's above him.
Yeah, in seconds. in seconds.
That's like when you get in fighting in a football stadium. You want to be in the row behind the guy so you're punching down.
Oh, for sure.
The bear went from being on the field to like 2 rows behind this guy, and the guy's sitting there with his fucking, I don't know what he had, bow and arrow or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bow and arrow.
But a bear doesn't know what a bow and arrow is. You could kind of just slowly turn and look right at him, shoot him right in the nose, couldn't you?
You might be able to, but it's not going to kill him instantly. The problem with that is they're going to get a hold of you. Like if a bear was right there in front of you and you shot it with a bow and arrow, there's 2 things that can happen. 1, it could run away, or 2, it can attack you. And if it decides to attack you, by the time it expires, it's going to take like 30 seconds for it to die. And by the time it expires, it's going to fucking maul you.
Yeah, no, but Leonardo, he got attacked for like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Dude, have you seen Hidden Figures?
I found out that Leonardo story was, it's supposedly based on a true story. We had Steve Ranella in here, who's a historian on that ancient Wild West shit, and he told me it was all bullshit. He's like, first of all, the guy did get mauled by a bear, yes,